We are live on YouTube. Bill Simmons here with Ryen Russillo. It's Buddy Hield Day. Who knew? The nephew of the Klay Thompson game. We now have the Buddy Hield game, and also an incredible Steph Curry game where he's just getting doubled the entire time. But Buddy Hield, 33 points, 9 for 11 from three, and the Warriors hold off the Houston Rockets, who were a tenacious band of pit bulls, just coming and coming and coming. But unfortunately for them, could not make a shot. Russillo, what are you going to remember about this game 10 years from now?
10 years from now, probably not much, but it is not exactly on par with my favorite Steph game of all time in 2019, scoreless in the first half and then 23 in the third quarter. So it goes for over 30 in the second. It's probably my favorite Steph game. But yeah, he wasn't getting it done. He was making other plays. Certainly his movement alone opens up other things for other people. But when Amen Thompson couldn't contest on that 3-point to the right side, like the first thought is like, he actually got an open look against a men. Like it actually happened. And then we realized it was a continuation of the calf injury that he had on that layup attempt. And so I think if you're a Houston fan, you're probably not going to remember this in 10 years, but at least this week you're wondering how the game goes if a men is able to just stay in there, because that was honestly, I think, one of the most defensively challenged series that I've seen from Steph in his career. And granted, he's older now too, but it was just a grind to even get open looks.
Can I make the case for the Steph Curry performance?
Okay.
Can I zag? Is it zag time already?
Well, you're not comparing it to 19, right?
No.
All right. Thank you.
You know what I liked about it? Um, First of all, I think Ime from the 2022 finals was just like, fuck this. I'm not letting this guy beat us. Not only am I gonna double him when he has the ball and send second guys at him, I'm going to double him when he doesn't have the ball. Have you ever seen a guy get guarded with multiple guys when he wasn't anywhere near the ball? Because that's what they were doing. They were grabbing him, they were holding him, they were like double teaming him from back and forth. And they were just like, you're not going to beat us. So then it came down to Buddy Hield and Podziemski for 3 quarters. Buddy was great. That was a rough Pods game. He played hard, but when you think, what did he finish with?
He's
He
4
was
12,
4 for 12, 1
1
for
of 7
7 from
yeah.
three. All those were open. But they basically were just like, we're not letting Steph. So Steph figures this out early, and you can either try to go hero ball and just launch some crazy threes with a hand in your face, or just continue to try to keep making the right plays, swinging the ball, trusting your teammates. It was a great trust your teammates performance. And then when they finally let up and he saw some daylight, he grabbed it, and then Jimmy took care of the rest. But I really thought like he did everything you had to do in this game. That team, there was one stretch where they had Thompson and Eason out there with Jabari Smith. And there was like this 3-minute stretch of defense where it was like, oh my God. Like it seemed like a miracle just to get a shot off in 24 seconds, but they unfortunately couldn't sustain it and they couldn't make a shot. I thought that was such an impressive win by Golden State, though. They were down to 5 guys plus Looney that you could trust. 5.5, 5 1/3.
Yeah, Kuminga got out there and he had some interesting possessions. So if you look at that with Moody, he only played 11 minutes in this game. Yeah, I mean, Draymond's 40 minutes and he hit a couple shots early, but you just know offensively, it's not necessarily something you can rely on. He had 2 shot clock threes in the second half. I think they're both in the fourth quarter. We're like, oh my God, because there's all these plays where the entire defense is designed to, we want it to end up in the wrong guy's hands. And if you're thinking of Houston and Ime's game plan and the players executing it, they actually executed it perfectly. You just don't expect Buddy Hield to go for 23 in the first half. So if you don't have that second guy, because even Jimmy is going to go a little bit slower. Like there's even a few moments with Jimmy before that outburst where you're like, Van Vliet got him on a turnover and you're like, man, you've got Van Vliet ISO'd. Like you gotta go with this guy. They didn't score a point for 4+ minutes until you had that Jimmy layup, then the threes, and then you had the review on the layup after Beal forced the turnover when Van Vliet pushed Butler, and that pretty much was the game. But it's incredibly frustrating for a Houston team that probably feels like they did a lot of things right tonight. But they ended up with 6 made threes. 3 of those were garbage time. So over the course of the game being competitive, a team that averaged 11 threes per game, games 1 through 6, had 3. So technically they had 6 in this one. But, when you and I were talking this morning, it's almost like Buddy Hield, even though less is expected of him, took on the Van Vliet role that we've seen in the last few games because that was a huge
Right.
difference. We can talk big lineups, rebounding edge, second chance points, points to paint. All these things are real things, but Van Vliet was playing out of his mind for 3 straight games in the series.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Warriors, you're just saying to yourself, is that going to happen 4 times in a row? I'm with you. I wrote down with like 4 minutes left, the Rockets were 3 for 14 from three, right as the game had gone south. And the Warriors, how many turnovers did they end up with? Seven. They had 5 turnovers with like 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And Kerr, that's been his passion point. Like if we play defense and we don't turn the ball over, we're always either going to be in the game or we're going to win. And the turnovers drive them crazy. And this is a team that can get really sloppy with the ball sometimes. Not today. Took care of it. That's another thing with the Steph game. Steph had 2 turnovers. How many times did he have 2 guys on him where he's like throwing the ball behind his head to Draymond or throwing these cross court passes or uh I don't know. He finished 22, 10, and 7. He led the team in rebounding, he led the team in assists, had 2 steals, 2 blocks. He led the team in every category except points. And had Thompson coming at him. Thompson was hitting a point in the third quarter when it just seemed like he thought he could go to the basket every single
Because he
time.
could.
And then he was guarding Steph on the other end and shutting him down. And there was this moment where I was like, God damn it. Do I have to raise the ceiling of the Amen Thompson building? Because I had it set at 15 floors. Do I have to like blow the roofs out and bring it up to 25? I just thought he was such a gem. And I think you're right. It's an interesting what if for them. If he doesn't hurt his calf, could they have like pulled this off defensively? My thing is they just didn't get any offense from anybody other than Thompson. I mean, Şengün had some around the basket points, but everyone else, Jaylen Green, 3 for 8 in what could be his last Rockets performance. Dylan Brooks, 3 for 9. Jabari, 1 for 5. Tari Eason, 2 for 6. Like they just couldn't get anybody to get hot. And then Van Vliet couldn't do it.
And the double big thing that's been such a huge part of this series where I think there's a version of how we talk about this and similarities to how we talk about Minnesota and Los Angeles, where it's
Yeah.
like running the football. Over the course of 7 games, if we play big and you play small, it's just going to hurt more. We're going to get extra opportunities. We're going to beat you on the boards. And over the course of a series, like having to do this every other night with us, you're going to pay some sort of tax. And you'd wondered if that's how this series had shifted because when we talked after game 1, I remember thinking, like, remember they started hacking Adams and they yanked him. I was like, I
Yep.
wonder if Ime's talking with his staff after the game, being like, we should not have given in to them on that. Maybe it's worth it for us because of our defense to sacrifice whatever we're not getting from Adams at the free throw line. So guess what happened? They actually defiantly kept him in when they did it later in the series. And
Game
it felt
six.
like
Yeah.
that was like this real turning point in this series that we're going to stay big. We're going to stay in the zone and it doesn't really matter. And then Ime clearly just didn't like what he had. I think the Looney minutes probably changed up some of the calculation on that because Kerr probably felt like he could just trust Looney a little bit more.
Allowed 11 minutes from Looney. It felt like he
Yeah.
played like 25. He only played
But
11,
they were
but
huge because
important.
they were two, when you trap Steph, like eventually he's going to figure it out. And they had 2 in the first half where Looney was the release on that and he had a layup and then he
Yeah.
had the free throws. So that was back-to-back possessions for 3 points. And then they started trapping him in the second half too. And that was turning into 4-on-3 behind him, which doesn't guarantee open shots or anything. But I, it really just comes down to the shot making. I think that's what's so great about Amen. Like I'm with you. I feel even better about him now going like that was actually the only dude with the ball in his hands who's like, fuck this. Like I'm
How
just
old is he?
going.
Is he 23,
Let's look it up. I don't think he's
22, 23?
20. He just turned 12, 22 in January. Because remember, those guys are a
Holy.
bit older coming out of
Yeah.
the pre-draft
God
thing. Maybe
damn.
like a year or two.
Well, you
But
know the other thing, it felt like Golden State like you were talking about the rebounding, because I agreed. Like watching the game go along, it's like, they're holding their own today. Though Houston out rebounded them by 14. I mean, it really came down to when you only make 3 3-point shots in the first 48 minutes of an NBA game, and the other team ends up with 18. I don't care how many extra rebounds you get. If you're going to be minus 15 on 3-pointers, it's too many points. It's just it becomes math after a while. If one team is going to get 54 points from three and the other team's going to get 18.
well, this is the impossible number. They have 14-3 in the offensive rebounding edge. They only took 2 more shots. And normally
Yeah.
that's like a massive turn. You're like, okay, where's the rest of the math? Like, what do I have to figure? It's only four worse turnovers on the Houston side of it. So normally when you're doing something like that, when you look at those Minnesota Lakers box scores at times, you just go, dude, they took at this point in the game when it still mattered, they're taking 16 more shot attempts is the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make. Cause you just go, even if you're not even shooting it that well, that many more attempts, it's just hard to beat a team that has that many more opportunities. And that wasn't even the case, even though it felt like they were beating them up. I also felt like Golden State really battled around the paint on
They
those
really did. It
balls where it's like, oh man, they're deep again. They've got a seal. They've got all these bodies. They're just taller and bigger than them everywhere, but they were fighting like crazy.
was like the
And
Clippers yesterday. Same thing. Like just so much fight. Oh no. Bad
no, I
analogy. That oh no, it was the opposite of the Clippers. My bad. I got my wires screwed up. It was the complete opposite of the Clippers. My bad.
not a lot of fight there from the
Not a
group,
lot
which
of
I know
not
that
a lot of fighting over screens, protecting the rim, grabbing rebounds. The
this is a
Warriors
best of
basically
nine,
were
right?
that. Game 8, we gotta save Harden. Let's rest these dudes. Um, so Buddy Hield, how many career playoff games do you think he's had? Counting the 7 in the series.
Um, I don't know, 19.
11.
All right.
He's played 11 games in his career. This was easily the best one.
So wait, so that's just the series last year with the Sixers where he didn't want to shoot?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I was like, wow, he really replicated the Klay Thompson game. And then I was like, I got to make sure I can't remember the Klay stats from that game. 41 points, 11 for 18 from three. Klay Thompson in 2016. So yeah, Klay, you're safe. You're way over here, buddy. But I mean, to get that out of him, and I've always kind of liked Buddy Hield. It's always been one of those, you're always, certain guys in the NBA are glass half full with. We're like, it's a right situation. I could really see him thriving. And it's just never really happened in a sustained way for a good team. Then you think, is he just a good stats, bad team guy? And then he just became a bad stats, mediocre team guy. And they sign him in the offseason, and he has a really good first 4 weeks with them. It's like, oh man, he might be able to beat Clay. And then halfway through the year, he's not playing anymore. And then they get this out of him and they save him. And now they live to fight another day. The Minnesota matchup seems pretty intimidating after what we just watched, but a lot of pride on this Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, Steph Curry era, I think.
Yeah, I'll admit throughout this series, even wanting the Steph thing to keep going because I just
Yeah.
enjoy Steph. Granted they weren't going to get OKC unless they were to advance, right? And OKC advances, but it kept coming back to me. And then even so with Minnesota's options and their size, I just was like, this is a nice little Golden State story. But I mean, come on. Are you
Right.
there? Are you going to pick him against Minnesota?
How healthy do we think Butler can be in a week? And how healthy did he look to you today?
Well, he doesn't have a week.
No, I know. I assume they're going to lose game 1. They just had, I mean, that game they just played counted as like a game and a half. That's the thing with these playoff games. Like if you start doing like, was that just one playoff game? Like that game we just watched was a game and a half of miles and energy expended, and
Yeah, that was
they're
105.
challenging everything.
Yeah, it's like the pitch count thing we always talk about.
Yeah, that was a 145 pitch game by the Warriors just now. And you're asking them to basically throw 3 days from now and try to throw 7 innings again. So I just
It's
assume,
it's yeah, I mean they're playing in 48 hours, man. Or
yeah,
well, they're actually playing
they're
in
gonna
less
be
than 48
luggage.
hours. So that might be one of those game one, I don't know what the line is yet here, but I'm sure it just got set. Yeah, I
Well, do you
really
want to? I have the series line. Do you want to guess? Minnesota, Golden State. By
Minnesota
the way,
minus 165.
I mean, you're getting really good at this. One of the things I'm proudest at in life is I felt like you were gambling, what's the word, lingual when I met you. But now I feel like you could move to Vegas for an NBA season and maybe make a run at it.
Well, I
You're
used to
almost there,
be
minus 155.
yeah, I used to be really really into it when I was younger.
Oh, there you
And
go. It was dormant.
it was
Van,
it was
Van Pelt
it
beat it
was
out of you.
no, luckily I didn't have enough money to ever get into too much trouble,
Yeah.
but it was uh it was definitely something I looked forward to a lot. And then once I was at ESPN, like it was a thing that you weren't actually supposed to talk about. Remember?
Oh,
Like,
I remember. I
So
got a couple phone calls.
yeah,
Yo,
I don't know. So I don't know how Minnesota, I would have thought they were a healthy favorite in this one, other than
ooh,
maybe
went
the
up.
public.
Yeah, minus 166 on FanDuel right now.
So
But that's factoring in they're almost definitely going to win game one, I would assume. They're just going to have so
what's the
much
line
more
in the
info.
game?
Line on the game is minus 5.5. That'll go up. Um, couple other couple other storylines from this game. Draymond defensively,
Yeah.
I know it's a theme over and over again. Today in this game, he was like a sweeper in soccer, or he was like Chara in hockey. He was just in front of the net, just protecting the goalie and just jumping out from under the basket and swiping down and stripping or protecting the rim or going vertical. I thought he was incredible, and they were able to steer the defense around him being able to do that and not really having to guard anybody, just pop out and help and jump in. I thought he was awesome, and those threes he hit was awesome. That was among the better Dre. I get it. 3 years ago, I didn't think he still had a game like that in him. When we were watching him in
Defensively,
2022, it felt like he was phasing toward the next phase of his career.
it's funny when you play really high level defense and you just call like a two-way player. And I think there's an argument to be said that he's actually still a one-way player because
Right.
there's not a lot of offense there. I'd say the layups, it's almost in his head a little bit. We saw some of it in game 6 where he had probably a better opportunity to just go at it and then see what happens. And then he
Yeah, when you
was
start
either,
contorting, when you start
yeah,
doing this stuff on the layups,
I mean, plenty
you
of
know,
guys screwed up trying to play for contact or whatever, and then he's always good for a few passes. You're like, where? Because some of them are, look, he's a great passer. He's one of the best passing kind of like hybrid guys of his era. But there's also some passes I think as he's gotten a little bit older where it's like, man, you were really forcing that one in there, or he's just like swinging it to guys, and it's
yeah,
like, did you think you had an angle on any of that stuff? So look, all of that, the offensive side, whatever you get from him is a plus. He wasn't on the ball in this game tonight much at all. There wasn't a lot of playmaking Draymond stuff. If anything, because it always felt like they were playing 5 against 4 when Draymond had the ball, like there just wasn't a
yeah.
lot of room for him to find some of the stuff that he maybe would normally do in a regular season game. But defensively, to have to go up against and just look, we know he's a tough guy. We know he's strong as hell. I think there's probably a Şengün conversation if he's a little bit more polished and a little bit more aggressive, even though he's incredibly skilled. I felt like tonight's a disappointing Şengün game because there's so many possessions where you're like, dude, you had just all you had to do was be big and go to the rim. You had
Yeah, he had
Podziemski
pods
against
on
you,
you.
switch. Yeah,
Yeah.
like just go. For Draymond to hold up when he's battling Adams and Şengün as much as he was for those minutes, and him not getting into foul trouble tonight was a huge part of it because then Steve didn't. I don't know why I called him Steve, but why Kerr didn't have to kind of manage his minutes at all.
The ref, one of the last Laker games, the ref did the challenge and he was given the verdict on the challenge and he said LeBron instead of James. And I just
Yeah,
thought that was really funny.
I caught
He was
that.
like,
Yeah.
LeBron had position. It's like, oh, we're first name, or is this like a Beyonce thing now?
Poor Mark Davis did a Christian Brown one. And he called him Christian Braun. If
Yeah,
you're
tough
him,
confidence
you gotta be
there.
thinking like, man, I've been in the league a few years. Like, come on.
A couple other notes from this game. Steph is now 5-0 in playoff series against Houston. Now that counts the 2016 one where he got hurt and they won anyway. But they still have not beaten a team with Steph Curry
That's what his
in a
gravity's like,
series.
though. Even if he's not playing, he's just in the building.
Are we going want to have a gravity combo? Just even street clothes gravity?
Well, I think it's at least worth mentioning because when I think of like we get to these points of the playoffs where if you don't like somebody and you have a platform, there's a really good chance that the guy you don't like gets eliminated, and then you just get to say that the guy sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's almost this video game where there's just different tiers of like all you're trying to navigate is a way to get to saying the guy you don't like sucks. And the chances, like the odds are in your favor that you'll get to say it about certain players. And my contention has always been like some players are really great and they're great in elimination games and they still lose. And when Steph doesn't have any points up until the very end of the first half, I'm watching it going, well, this is going to turn into one of those moments where when everything that's happening offensively, there's a few possessions where he just doesn't have it on cuts, but they're like the Buddy Hield left side first half 3, and Van Gundy called it out. They ran Steph through, everybody shifted to the right side, and then
Yeah.
Buddy's fine. And then there's a Draymond drive on the left side where they run Steph through everything. Everybody, it's like a wave of people just going to his side. So by him just being active, because I think there's a lot of stars in those spots, especially a little bit older, are just so frustrated. They're not going to cut. They're probably going to put up a few more shots just to say at least I took a few. And he
Yeah.
he really wouldn't even take the bad shots if he felt like it wasn't a good look.
So
And
you're coming
it's
around. I thought
no,
that
but
was you're on my side now. I feel like I won you over.
well, I,
I
I
thought
think
that was
I
a good Steph game. I was ready to zag the whole time, even in halftime when he had 3 points. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure out how to do this.
I guess I don't feel like you should have to defend the guy anymore at 37 years old, and I'm not picking them in the next round. So this has been kind of nice.
Oh, that
But
you're getting
oh
off?
yeah, yeah. I don't think they're going to be
Want me to
decent.
help you? Want me to help you with your bags as you get off the bandwagon? It's like
I
1923. You're just getting
did
off the
you
train.
when I asked you, did you pick or did you just give me the odds?
I'll give you a thought in a second. Can I? Can we talk about Steve Kerr for a second? Because I
Yeah, because
thought he
there's
coached an awesome game today. Uh,
what did you like?
I rarely do this because this is the old Hubie Brown thing about Hubie Brown loved every timeout. Um, I thought Kerr called like 3 or 4 of the best timeouts of the playoffs. He felt, and we've talked about this in the past. There's only a couple coaches that really understand how to protect the lead, where it's like, all right, we are up between 8 and 15 points for an hour here. I can't let them get a run. I can't let the crowd get into it. I feel something bad happening timeout right now. And he did it like every time I felt like, oh man, I think the wheels are about to come off. He was just like, I've had enough. He had that one play when they went zone in the fourth quarter, and Van Gundy called it out. And he was like, he needs to get Jimmy Butler back in the game to break this zone. There was like 10 seconds left in the shot clock, and Kerr's like, timeout. I don't wait, I don't like the possession we're about to have. Let me preempt this. To not know what you're getting from any of your bench guys, right? Think about the bench. It was other than Looney, just a complete no-show from everybody. He knows he has to play Butler and Curry big minutes. He obviously talked about that, but I think they went 44 and 45 for minutes.
Hmm.
And it's like, how can I takes Curry out with like a minute before the end of the quarter just to kind of buy him that little break? I just thought he did a really good job.
So he called one at 9:42 when he didn't like it immediately and he wanted to get Butler back in the game. And I love that timeout because I do think, especially in this game where it was low scoring, there have been games in the past where you're watching a coach and he wants to make the substitution and then they don't have a stoppage. He doesn't want to burn the timeout. And you're like, okay, but what's more valuable? This timeout, which again, I'd always want to have one in my back pocket, especially on an inbound in a close game. But there's also some math of, okay, we just went 3 possessions on offense without this guy. And in game 6, where Detroit beat New York, Brunson left the game and then he went to go to the scores table at about 2 minutes left.
Game five,
And
you mean?
yeah, excuse me, game 5, right? Because they eliminated him in 6.
Yeah.
So game 5, when Detroit won, and granted, they were dealing with a Brunson situation that isn't normal, but Tibbs is thinking clearly he's going to get some kind of stoppage in there. And when I was watching it, I'm like, you just gave up multiple offensive possessions with him at the scores table because you didn't want to call a timeout to get the guy in there. And really, when you think of the game and how close it was and who
That was
Brunson
it.
is,
The 2 minutes.
yeah. So it doesn't happen very often, but I'm with you, especially on that one at 9:42.
I have one other big storyline from this game,
Is it Houston or is it Golden State?
but we're going to take a break for the
Oh,
podcast.
I
We're
don't
going to
even
keep
know.
going on YouTube. YouTube people, don't go away. Here's the other big storyline. Houston lost in round one, and now I feel like if they won, the Giannis trade becomes a little bit harder as a destination. Because it's like, yo, we won. Let's follow the motto of OKC and some of these other teams. Now it's like, hey, we lost in a game 7. We have a chance to get Giannis. What's it gonna? Oh, it's gonna be Şengün and I don't know, Jabari and Jaylen Green. You pick 3: Eason, Jaylen Green. What 3 of those guys and a bunch of picks for Giannis? Like, let's go. Can we? We'll re-sign Van Vliet for the extra year. We'll keep Brooks. We'll have Giannis. We'll have Thompson. We'll still have some picks and some maneuverability, and let's overpay. And they have the best chance to overpay and put Giannis in a situation. But as we talked about a week ago, they also have the best chance to give Milwaukee guys back because Milwaukee can't really tank because they're under picks. So they could at least give them a bunch of players to be like, yeah, you guys are getting a ton of assets here. Who knows? Like, let's say it's Şengün, Tari Eason, and Jabari. Like, that's a pretty good haul with all the picks for Giannis. So I felt like if they lost this game, maybe the Giannis thing becomes way more realistic. Do you think I'm right?
Well, I think the way it's discussed, I would say you're right. I resist all of that, though. I think that's the dumbest shit you can do when you start planning based on like, hey, we won a first round matchup, but we lost in the second round. So if we had lost in the first round, we would approach our team entirely differently in the
You and
offseason.
I agree. I'm just trying to I'm trying to base that on the history of how the NBA has gone, where people can fool themselves because they won a round to be like, oh, we're closer than and I think they should try to get Giannis, and if they can keep Thompson out of the deal, just do it.
I would try to figure out a way to move some of these younger pieces because you have so many. There's younger guys that have value that don't even play. And I think the
Right.
damning part of this series is the Jaylen Green conversation. I mean, he's just,
Is there a
I mean,
conversation anymore?
well, I think there's a real conversation because the highs, whether it was the end of 2 years ago, which I always call the Gerald Green season,
Hmm.
when Şengün was out, he was so good. I felt like he turned a corner. I felt like the light was kind of going off with him in some of his playmaking. And then, he's had his moments, and we know what he can do scoring wise. But, the game when he had 38, it's like, see, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Well, that was the aberration. I mean, he had 7, 9, 8, 11, 12, and 8 in the other 6 games. That's not just like, hey, he's young and I know this is early and yes, he is young and all this stuff, but like a men clearly needs to be the priority for him around whatever they do with Van Vliet and whatever they do with Brooks. So if Green is taking away shot opportunities from a man next season, that's getting in the way of his development because, again, a man isn't even like fully formed. And just some of his reads, his aggression, his confidence. And Jalen's just kind of this wild card guy who drives and the decisions aren't great. And if they had made it, I would have thought all of these things, by the way, if they had won this series. If they had
Yeah.
made it, to your point, you wonder if they go, okay, hey, we took a step forward as an organization and, a couple things break our way or whatever. I would be really, really aggressive about adding to whoever you're keeping here and trying to get out there in the market. Because we're talking about Giannis, who's, never lower than third best in the world in the conversation. I mean, and you wouldn't do a men for him. You would say, hey, I'm
Go
sorry.
fourth in the world. No,
You go
Ahmed's off.
fourth.
Thompson's off the table. He's off the table. I'm not discussing him.
Okay, so if it's a bidding war, because if we're doing any kind of Giannis conversation,
He's not. You can't put Thompson in the deal. Like at that point, and if I'm Milwaukee, I'm saying the whole summer Thompson has to be in the deal.
well, of
Like
course,
we're gonna do that dance back and forth forever. But ultimately, if I'm Houston, I'm like, look, you're not getting him. We have a ton of picks. We have all these other guys. So let's figure this out. I think with the Jaylen piece, the part that's disappointing to me, because what I really liked about him when he had that moment that you talked about from 2 years ago was it wasn't just the scoring. Like I felt like he was starting to
totally.
create shots for other guys. Guess how many assists he had from game 4, game 5, game 6, game 7?
I
Four
have,
games.
yeah, I have it up in front of me right
All
now.
right. He had,
Yeah,
well, for the audience, he had 6 assists total in 4 games. So he's turned into this guy that he's either looking for his own shot or he's not doing anything for anybody else. And I feel like he's gone backward with that. The defense certainly isn't on the par with Thompson and Neeson and Jabari, who I think are just way, way better than him. Um, and I don't know what he is. Like, would you trade for him? Let's say you're like, let's say you're a lottery team right now. It's like, oh, we can get Jaylen Green, pretty good contract, 33 million next year. What's he worth? Is he worth a top 5 pick in this draft? I would say no.
no, because you would still hope for like the unknown of hitting on somebody to cost control the whole thing. Whereas you as a team, like I wonder if Miami, but what would Miami be able to offer that would make sense? Is there some 3-team thing where Miami goes, well, we'll bring him in here and we're in transition anyway, and we still think he's a really talented guy because I think we have seen that talent. But this is a really, and if you're doing local Houston radio this week, it's a bummer of a Jaylen Green conversation because now he's just in a men's way. If you bring him back
Right.
next year, he's just in his way.
If you were Houston, like if we were running Houston, we would keep Thompson and Eason, and we would try to do Şengün with Jaylen Green with Jabari. right? Those three plus picks. We'll take one of your bad contracts back with Giannis, and let's try to figure it out. And now I get to keep Eason, and I get to keep Thompson, and I get to put them with Giannis. I bring Van Vliet back. I have Brooks back, and now my team's better. And
Yeah,
by the way, I like
usually,
Jabari as an asset. I think he's misused on this team. I just think they stick him in the corner. They don't run plays for him. I think he plays hard. I like him defensively. I think he could be a stretch five on the right team. That's somebody I would target this summer if I was somebody else.
yeah, I still hold out some hope for him, but he also showed that the handle thing's a real problem in this
Yeah,
series. And Steph had a defensive play against him on the left side on the baseline where Jabari's like, all right, I'm ready to start going to work. And like Steph knew he couldn't dribble. So he just stayed straight up with him and he held
right.
up great against him. And he had another play, I think it was in game 6, where he like went to kind of create on his own. I was like, damn it, because I really like him and I'm with you. I think there's a role for him where he's playing 30 plus minutes a night and he's hitting threes and he's playing really good defense and all that kind of stuff. Even though Steph got him on a switch, she was so happy to get him on a switch and not have it be a men on that layup in the second half. But the only thing I would say about the amend thing is if it's a bidding war, which I don't know why it would be that, right? Giannis has to go to them and say, I'm good, but then also feel free to send me anywhere. That doesn't really seem to be the way any of this stuff works for stars, or it's not just open for Milwaukee to decide where they want to send him. So if Houston's not necessarily bidding against anybody and they put together a sexy package, then you're right. They shouldn't have to throw him in there. But if it's somehow turned into there's 4 or 5 teams involved in this,
Mhm.
then it becomes the kind of conversation of like, really, you wouldn't include men in there for somebody who's as good as Giannis. But again,
They have the advantage though, because again, Milwaukee needs to get players back so they can compete next year, unless they just decide their picks a
right.
sunk cost for a year. And Houston's really the only team, other than maybe the Knicks, that could actually give them players that could still make them good. Because they have the Doc situation too, where Doc's got 2 years left in his deal. He's never wanted to be in a rebuilding situation ever. So he's not going to be happy. He's not going to be psyched to just throw in the towel. Do you think this ultimately was a win for Houston in this playoffs? Would you say it's a W to go to 7 against Golden State and then you lose in 7 because your offense, which was the thing everybody was pointing at this entire season as the thing that was going to sink you in the end? And then that's exactly what happened in the end.
If you label it just as the 2 losing to the 7, I think you're losing sight of how ridiculous the Western playoffs were.
Yeah.
So other years, you'd be like, what a huge disappointment because they were on the cusp of it. They fall apart a little bit at the end of the season, because they were one of these great stories. And for 2 years now, they've been one of our favorite teams to watch because of all these guys and wondering how it's all going to shake out. I still feel like the entire season is a positive. I know it hurts right now, but it's positive. And you
I
lost
agree
to
with you.
Steph. You lost to Steph. You lost to the Warriors. The history is terrible, as you mentioned now, with this group, this Warriors group going against this franchise. So, even though it's the 2, I would throw the 2-7 part of this out because all of these teams 2 through 7 were really close.
Well, also the Warriors lose that stupid Spurs game, which comes back to haunt them because now Minnesota is the 6th seed with home court because they lost that ridiculous Harrison Barnes game where they were trying.
Yeah.
And the Spurs were just like, our season's kind of sucked. Wemby's been gone for 2 months. This will make our season if we can somehow stick it to you guys in this game. Chris Paul, Barnes, and they stick it to him, and now they don't have home court. But I will say I'm not positive how much that matters for this particular Warriors team because we've seen them stink at home and we've seen them win on the road. So,
The game
you know,
7 stuff is crazy too. Like NBA history, we grew up with that 80+% chance of winning at home. And
right.
now, is it 9 of the last 13 road teams have won?
Yeah.
It's absurd.
You know who didn't win yesterday was the
Oh,
Clippers.
oh, wait.
Um,
So yeah, it might be 9 of the last
the,
14.
the Clippers tried to keep it old school, the way you used to remember the game sevens.
Yeah, I appreciate
Um,
that.
Golden State, Minnesota. I think it's a really, really, really tall task for Golden State when you consider that Kuminga now. I don't. Do we see Kuminga again if it's not garbage time? I'm gonna say no. He was so bad in that. Hey, not to defend Kuminga, but I think Kerr probably broke his confidence completely, and I don't know what they were expecting was going to happen if you're throwing him in. Moody's been up and down. Post has been up and down. Peyton, who missed the game today, which I forgot to mention, might have helped the Warriors because Houston crafts this defense thinking we're just going to double Steph everywhere and but make these other guys beat us. And then all of a sudden, Buddy Hield is in that Peyton spot playing big minutes who can actually shoot. Maybe Peyton doesn't make a couple of those, but um,
Oh,
is
by the
this
way, I
just
think you're
a
right. I think you're right because I think that's why we didn't see Quentin Post a lot because even though the idea of him is a stretch five to try to pull one of those bigs away, I think Houston was thrilled every time Quentin Post ended up taking a three in a playoff
or
series.
had the
And almost
ball? Yeah,
all of these were high leverage moments. And when you factored in when he was at the rim for rim protection, Amen's like, this is
yeah.
unbelievable. I
Thank
think
you.
Post still doesn't know what Amen did on him on that drive a couple games ago. So I think Peyton was probably one of those guys where the ball ended up in his hands a little bit too much. Post was one of those guys. So now they weren't really even options tonight. And by the way, I know that in the regular season series, Golden State has the 3-1 advantage. The last time they played, double checking it, was January 15th. I feel like Minnesota closed as the healthiest version of themselves and was still just a weird team because 3 of the games were in December.
Can I intervene with you once? I got to stage an intervention. I don't think you can look at the regular season matchups anymore. I think it's a 95% chance nobody on both teams played in any of the games. I feel like I want the 5 hours of my life back where I've looked at different matchups and like, oh, Halbert didn't play that game. Ah, no Mitchell that game. It's just you're just learning nothing. It's not like it used to be even 5 years ago. You're like, oh yeah, that February game when they all played, they won 138 to 130. There's never a game where everybody played anymore. Uh, listen, we talked before the playoffs started about how Minnesota was a long shot that we didn't totally understand because there was a path for them, right? Their path was beating the Lakers, getting home court in the round 2 against Golden State, and then just basically being toe to toe and unafraid against OKC. I think Minnesota should win this series. And I think Golden State, I continue to think they're a guy and a half short. They're not even a guy short. They're like a guy and a half short. And you're going to need you need 8 guys against this Minnesota team because they're deep. They have different lineups. They have size. They can go small. You have the Edwards piece where he's just relentless on both ends. And I think Minnesota should be more of a favorite. I would have had this at minus 200. I think the Warriors are getting a lot of respect in this. I think Minnesota is a good team.
What's really funny is everyone from Minnesota has
Has what?
played in the 4 regular season games.
Is that true? You
Yeah,
just looked that up.
I knew it was going to happen because you're right. Your general point is
So
right.
there it is. There's the 5%.
But see, there's just a lot of times, whether it's who played, because Draymond missed a couple, so Golden State has a 3-1 edge. But I don't know that you can look, and this is the thing I always struggle with every single year is so you're watching Golden State and they have this great closing stretch. Okay. Houston felt like they competed throughout the entire year. So those felt real, like a closing month. If you'll give me a month,
Yeah.
the Clippers felt like a real closing month. Okay, well, does that mean that that was all misleading? Because Denver went into it as the worst defensive team in the playoffs. The Timberwolves closing the way they closed felt real. That's why I picked them, and also just because I felt like how is no one picking them? Like this isn't that daunting to go up against Los Angeles. And
Well, did
there's
you know LeBron was going to sprain his MCL near the end there?
I didn't know that.
Who knows? That last 7 minutes of that game 5,
This isn't even a LeBron thing,
he
but we're
hadn't
getting
sprained
up
his MCL.
we're getting updates on injuries. We're like, hey, the normal time frame for this Michael Porter Jr. shoulder thing would be 4 to 5 weeks. He looked great in game 7.
You're right. This is a new
This
language
year,
of normally he'd be out 10 days, but he's going to get through it.
they did it with
And then
Darius
they look
Garland
awesome.
today. They did it
Yeah.
with Austin Reeves. They did it with LeBron. So LeBron's not the only one. We've got like a first team of he would have been out.
I'd like to
Yeah,
raise my
hand
hand
up.
on this one.
Please do.
Everybody's hurt in the playoffs. Everybody has injuries, right? Like the Celtics are starting their series tomorrow. Drew's going to play. He has a hamstring. They probably rest him 2 more weeks. Tatum hurt his wrist. If it's December, they're probably sitting him for 2 weeks. Jalen's got the knee. Like it's May. I would expect people to get hurt. I'm sure Steph has like 2 injuries that we probably don't even know about.
Steph's
All these
hand,
guys are fucking banged up. Steph
it
had that
looks
crazy thumb thing.
right. It looks like footage from some sort of like pharmaceutical ad, like during the commercials, where you just go, if you're experiencing growths
Right.
on your right
He got
thumb,
stung by a stingray in Cabo.
Although if I'm Chris Finch watching the tape of this series, being like, are we also not going to get called for anything off the ball with Steph like this series? When they called the off ball on Şengün,
Yeah,
he may just run that on a loop and they'll have like a celebratory dinner and just be like, let's
yeah,
not get ahead of ourselves. It was only round one, but I think we should all get together as an organization, cake and champagne, that there was actually a foul called on Steph at some point in the series. Because, it was it's going to be one of the most disrespectful star whistles. And I know the off the ball stuff is just never policed the same way. I just thought at some point the rest might be like, let's call one of these early to see if they,
I didn't know you
we
were
could.
allowed to bear hug somebody off the ball.
There was
Because
one
that
play
seems
where
like it's happening now regularly or at least in that last series it did. They're just bear hugging.
if you're wrestling with your younger brother and he's just weaker than you, unless it sucks and he's just Kyle Long and you're Chris Long, but you hold your brother's arms out and you're like,
Yeah.
why are you, not necessarily making him hit himself in the face, but you're just holding his arms and there's nothing he can do and the wrist control and all this stuff. There was one play where Van Fleet had both of Steph's wrists
Right.
as he was trying to like get off of some sort of screen they were setting off the ball and he was holding both of his arms.
If you're defending somebody the same way you would hold back one of your buddies from trying to take a swing at the bouncer at 2 in the morning, that's probably a foul.
Yeah. I'm glad they won so that it doesn't sound like it's making excuses, but
They got away with
there's
it was smart. They got away with what they wanted to get away with.
if Minnesota can get away with that, but they also have one of the least respected stars whistle wise in Ant, but it's for different reasons because Ant plays to avoid, doesn't play to contact. Like Luca plays to contact. Some of these guys are really smart, like knowing Brunson, hey, if I just play into the contact, like it's going to go my way. Ant is so dynamic that he's avoiding everybody and
Right.
everybody's just in awe of his athleticism. And I think a lot of the stuff with Steph is he's not going to get the foul calls because they're not just traditional drives towards the hoop. Granted, if he's fouled on a 3-point attempt, that's different. But the off the ball stuff with him in a playoff series, and good for the defense for getting away with it. But when you really lock into it and watch it for a few possessions, you just go, dude, I can't believe somebody wouldn't want to retire. Like this is what I have to
Or
do.
that why he's gonna punch somebody. You know what's crazy? So you get Minnesota Golden State. That's a great series for the league, right? Curry versus Edwards. I think both of those teams are really fun to watch. I did not think
Vincenzo
Houston,
Pajemski.
right. I didn't think Houston was very fun to watch, just for the record. Not bummed out to not get them for the next 2 weeks. I was pretty much done with Houston Rockets basketball games. No offense to their fans. Wasn't exactly a great hang. It's like, oh, cool. It's 74-72 with 5 minutes left. Minnesota Golden State is a great series, and yet it's not even one of the two best series that we have left from like a big storyline basketball standpoint because that Indiana Cleveland series, and we've been talking about Indiana for weeks now, and the people just haven't been on it.
No, you've been on
Even
it more. I know that I'm labeled as more dismissive, but today was tremendous. So go
well,
ahead.
Cleveland was minus 500 um,
In this series,
in the series
so you
heading
bet
into
the
the series.
Pacers.
I have multiple Pacer bets. I did the Pacers plus 2.5 for the games. That'll go like 6 or 7. I did Pacers and 6 was 10-1. I bet them today. I was just like, especially when no Garland, it's like these teams are even. I looked up the last 50 games, Russillo. Cleveland was 35-15 in the last 50 games, and
Yeah.
the Pacers were 34-16. And if you look at the net rating, the Cavs were like 7.7 and the Pacers were like 5.1. I think they're pretty even teams. And you saw it today. Like when the Pacers, when they can play the pace they want to play and they suck you into it and teams get sucked into it and they can't help it. And once we're doing this, they're happy. They're in. They were getting the matchups they wanted. I think they can play with that team. Like I wasn't surprised they won today. I think it's gonna be a long series. And I actually think it's probably the best basketball series of the four. Just for like, I don't know what's gonna happen. The styles are great. It's a styles make fights. It's a great series. And I thought that first game was awesome.
Today was awesome.
That was an
I did
awesome basketball game.
okay. Now I'm not gonna you guys you here, but there is
Yeah.
something with the gambling world that I actually get annoyed with. Did you pick the Pacers to just win the series though?
I mean, I bet them to win in
But
six.
you bet them with the payout at 10-1.
Yeah. I
All
thought they
right.
were the
So
best
like
value.
this
If I
just
had gun to my head, I would have probably said Cavs in 7.
Right. This
if I
is the
had to
point
make
that
a
I'm
pick.
is
But
when
do I
somebody
think the Pacers
hits.
can win in seven? Sure. I just feel like it's a 50-50 series is my point. It's not a minus 500 favorite series.
Right, but what happens if you pick the upset, but you put a ticket on a 5-1 payout or a 10-1 payout? Then I've
Yeah.
noticed, I don't know if it's you, but guys that I follow that are really into gambling would be like, well, I picked him. And it's like, no, you picked the odds. You picked the value. You
Fair.
didn't pick it straight up.
Here's where I took a loss. I picked the Clippers against Denver. And I had Clippers stuff multiple places. And I know we're gonna
We-
talk about that in a second, but that was one where I was like, I think the Clippers will win this series. This Pacers Cavs is more, I think either team can win this series. And I think it's a 50-50 series. I felt that going in. And now that they won game one, it hasn't changed. I don't think it's 60-40 now. I just think either team can win. And the Garland thing is a big deal because they needed his 3-point shooting. You can see it today. I think they were like 8 for 39 from three. Um, it was a lot of Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome, 20 minutes, fantastic. 30 minutes, now we're pushing it a tiny bit.
we were talking about what's real, right? As teams close out after the All-Star break. Let me just do it this way. Before the All-Star break, the Pacers were 21st in defense in the NBA. After the All-Star break, they were 8th. So the thing about them that always bothered me against another talented team was you're just going to be able to score against them whenever you want to. And last year's playoff run, that was still true. There were injuries against the teams they faced. We've covered all of this stuff. But if you
Yeah.
want to look at a team where you go, hey, something's a little different there. Now, I don't know if the Cleveland closing numbers for that team are as relevant because they were at such a ridiculous pace through so much of the season. They knew they weren't going to lose the 1 seed. I felt like a lot of the Cleveland games I watched, like, I don't know, maybe they're still too new to feel like they're taking the foot off the gas, but it felt like that might have been a misleading closing part of it. But that Pacers
Yeah.
defensive thing is real. And I wondered also too, like in the series against Milwaukee, I'm like, Carlisle's really going to play 10 or 11 guys. I think he put Ben Shepherd in the game as the 11th guy in the first quarter of a playoff game. But like
That's my all-time pet peeve.
who does that? And yet he played a ton of guys again today. So there's a lot of stuff that I really like from the Pacers today. And the Garland part of it's totally true. Because as much as we both love Ty Jerome, he can't be taking 20 shots in a playoff game.
In 29 minutes. And
And some
also
of
it
them
it
are
it, it
rough. Like,
hurts the calibration of the team too, because now you don't have him coming off the bench in the same way to swing a game because he's just out there playing most of the game. I will say this, if Garland's not going to be 100% healthy in this series, I actually think Indiana is going to win. But it seems like that injury, like whatever, they're being careful with it. And it seems like he's going to be able to play with it and not be completely compromised. But
you could
uh,
argue 3-point variance in this one too. 19 to 36
no
for the
question.
Pacers, 9 to 38 for the Cavs. The alarming part about the film, if you were going to go back and watch this, the Pacers' shots were open the majority of this game. And part of
And
that's
they,
Halliburton's brilliance. Like I know
yeah,
people, he's a funny one too, because it's like, man, when he is really rolling, do you realize how special he is at breaking the paint, getting past the first defender? Then the help defender thinks that maybe he's giving up on his drive, and then it's too late and he's already by you. But people are collapsing. He's finding open shooters all over the place. I think he could have attacked even more if he wanted to today. Um, and I'm
by the
look,
way, he had 22 and 13. And I think he leads the league for me. And when I watch a Pacers game, I'm always like, just go buy him. Just go buy
yeah,
him. You find yourself saying that with him constantly. Just go buy him.
a
You
lot of
can.
a lot of open looks. Because you could tell when Cleveland cranked up its intensity and Atkinson did the in-game interview, he was almost sitting there like a fan going, this is awesome, isn't it? But he also felt better because Mitchell was
Mm.
just driving at will, which I think there's going to be a lot of that in there. Like Miles Turner being pulled away is a problem. They don't have any depth behind that against the two bigs for Cleveland, although Atkinson did separate those guys the way he normally would. But I was really, really impressed with the Pacers. And I don't know if it's just the 3-point shooting. I don't know if it's that even though the Pacers are better than Milwaukee, this might have been a wake-up call for the Cavs. Like that Heat series was about as garbage a series as you're ever going to see in the playoffs. Do you know that
Yeah,
was the
you're
highest point differential ever in a 4-game sweep?
really?
That was the biggest point differential 4-game sweep in NBA history. That's how disgusting that first round series was against Miami. So you've got to wonder if Cleveland had a moment where like, holy shit,
Yeah, but
this
you know
is
what though? We both watched the whole game. I thought Cleveland played hard. The Pacers came out. I've seen them do that where they just put you on your heels. They turn you on track meet and you get excited because it's the first game of the series. Like, all right, let's run, let's go. And it's like, that's exactly what they want you to do. Cavs tried to start slowing it down. Mitchell took over. And if you're the Cavs, I think you would take solace watching the tape. The Pacers made some dumb shots. Like, what was that one, Nemhart? He made like a 29 footer at one
To the
point
right
with like two
side.
seconds
Yeah.
on the. And then he made another one. Then Toppin made a couple. And it was just like every time they needed a dumb shot to go, and it did. But I thought Halliburton was I thought he controlled the game offensively, especially some of the transition stuff, which I think if you're Cleveland, when you have guys out there like, Wade and what's it's Struce. Like I thought athletically they were kind of trying to make the Cavs pay for, are you gonna put those shooters out? We're gonna go on you. And the other thing that was interesting to me was Halliburton attacking Allen. Who I think is a really good defensive center, but he was like, come on out here. Let me do my yo-yo thing with you. And he got him a few times.
Yeah, that one I watched where I think the league's like letting guys change their pivot foot a little bit more than I ever remember. And so,
When you take the 5 steps backwards to shoot the three.
well, the backwards travel thing, I've never, and I guess it's legal, but I don't understand how that evolved into something. But look, everybody does it, so I'm not even making it specific to anyone. But Halliburton got Allen on one. Yeah, he got Allen on one of those. And then the drive where he like delayed it mid drive and then went, that was straight. That was 2 steps. That wasn't even like an
Yeah.
NBA 2.5 or whatever. That was like a real drive. And it reminded me a bit of when the Celtics, I can't believe you're not doing this and I'm doing it. But
How
Tatum,
dare
I
you?
think the Celtics preferred Allen against Tatum in a switch because they like Tatum. Look, it's just a lot to ask of any 7 foot guy, even as great defensively as some of these dudes are, to hold up. That's what made Garnett
Yeah.
so special. Is it's just like, oh, you're gonna switch into me? Like, what are you nuts? But Tatum likes that matchup because it's also pulling Allen away on everything else. And I'm with you. I thought Halliburton was in complete control every time he had the ball, to the point where it's like, I think you guys could actually do this more. But the balance was so incredible from 6 guys tonight, including all the starters. It was, I thought it was just off the charts impressive, because then you blow the lead. Mitchell's going nuts, although he can't hit any threes. That place is on fire. Like, the announcers are basically saying, hey, man, like
Yeah.
Greg Anthony's like, I think this is the loudest building I've ever been in for a playoff game.
Yeah. Settle down,
And
Greg.
to be on the road and blow, well, not blow the, but you just expected the Cavs are going to have some kind of fight in them and then still respond and close it out. As impressive as a win is, like, I'm not going to say today, but I think it's just up
That
there with anything else we've seen. Yeah, for this
That move
playoffs.
Mitchell has where he drives right at the guy and he does the high dribble
Oh, it's
and he
awesome.
carries the ball by his head and then rips it forward and comes in. And I
Your
was
mic all
like,
right?
where have I seen that before? And I thought about it for like an hour. It's Dwayne Wade's move. That was the old Dwayne Wade. Are those the only two guys that had that? I'm trying to think. Did Kobe have that?
I feel like Kobe had everything. He
But did
splits the
Kobe do that one,
screen.
that high, bringing the ball up high, and then you're almost like driving the ball down into the guy and then bouncing off and
J.R. Ryder, maybe?
no, Isaiah Ryder changed his name.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I
Mitchell
just
was
remember him
great.
as
You know what
J.R.
I loved about Mitchell in that game? It was the same reason why I felt like he had to be a top 5 MVP thing. Like he could feel what was happening, and he's like, I got this, I got this. And he really like legitimately took over the game and swung it for a couple of minutes.
It was
This
eighty
series is
sixty
awesome.
eight. It was 80-68, and he drove 6 straight possessions, just drove.
Yeah.
And with him, he's probably as good as anybody is splitting the two defenders, which is, when Kobe, I think Kobe's probably the best I've ever seen at it. Wade always wanted to reject the screen a little bit more than you expect. But with Mitchell, you don't even necessarily need, like, sometimes you just screen to try to get people moving around and figure out where the help's going to be, all this stuff. It's not as much as it is hunting the big all the time. But Mitchell, he can beat the guy off the dribble, and then he can beat the help defender. He can split a double. He can, he can do anything that you really ask of him there. But if he's not going to hit his threes, you know, I mean, you don't expect him to shoot that poorly.
1 for 11. Yeah, if I'm Indiana, I'm psyched because I almost feel like you have to win game 1 on the road if you're going to win a 7-game series where you don't have the home court. Otherwise, now you're looking at, you have to win 4 out of 6, and it's just the math becomes too hard. It always seems like winning that game 1 is huge. I think they know they can win there. And I continue to think that's as good of a team as anyone in the East. Boston obviously has a higher ceiling. Cleveland has the pedigree from the season and probably have the best player. I would say Mitchell's slight edge over Halliburton, but I think Indiana can play with both those teams. I was talking to my dad today. My dad's like, who would you want to play in round three if we get by the Knicks out of these two? And I was like, we want to play Indiana because we'd have home court. He's like, yeah, good point, but man, they're scary. And both of those teams have played the Celtics really well and know that they can hang with them and potentially beat them, you know? And for the Celtics, health is going to be the biggest enemy for them these next two rounds, whether they can, on a back-to-back season, try to keep everybody upright and playing big minutes. But I think all those teams are really good. I think Indiana, if Indiana made the finals, I wouldn't be shocked. I
I'd
wouldn't.
be a little surprised.
I'd
Yeah.
be shocked if Golden State made it with how limited their roster is. Like if they actually put together two more rounds, that would be like playing Quentin Post and Kuminga, hoping Moses Moody's making threes, and like that would be shocking. I would
To
not be
think
shocked by
about,
Indiana.
like Carlisle, even though he plays a ton of guys, he knows what he's going to do over the course of a game, and then he can kind of figure out how he wants to close. Kerr doesn't know who he's going to close fourth quarters with
Right.
this
He's
late into
like,
the
oh,
season.
Moses Moody can't make a shot today. Cross him off for
Game
my fourth quarter.
89,
Yeah.
he's turning around going,
He's like, hey, do we have
who?
anybody else? Is Andre Iguodala over there? Oh no, he's not on our team anymore. You know the other thing with Indiana that I think is interesting? Everybody they bring in, I like.
Yeah, you like Jarris Walker.
I even like him. Yeah, but like
Do you want
Toppin,
to
I was like,
expand
all
on
right.
that?
But when Toppin's open in the corner, do you think the shot's going in the fourth quarter? Because I think it's going in.
After that
When
Minnesota run, yeah.
when TJ McConnell's driving to the basket, I'm like, I think he's going to score. I think they're a good team. Continue. I thought they were the best value for all the bets before the playoffs because they were like
You have no hesitation then. I mean, Thomas Bryant's out there, right? They're playing Obi Toppin at the 5 against the Cleveland options that they have
five
as,
minutes for Thomas.
but I'm like,
I just think Carlisle was showing off at that point. He's like, you don't think I can play 11? Watch this.
doesn't that mean, isn't Thomas usually the 12th guy?
I'll tell you
Because
this. If Garland's not healthy, I think Indiana wins the series. And if Garland ends up being healthy, I still think they could win it. I think it goes 6 or 7. I thought that was a great bet. That was one of my favorite bets, the Indiana plus 2.5. Let's take one more break for the podcast, then we got to talk Clippers. All right, we're back on YouTube. The Clippers. So, big picture, I think this is the rare series that was decided in game 4. You see this sometimes where sometimes the games, I know it's weird to be like game 7, anyone can win. And the line certainly reflected it. The line was even, then it was -1, then it ended at Nuggets -1.5, which I asked FanDuel, like, have we had a game 7 line that low? And we really haven't. Like they're usually like 3 and up for a game 7. So even Vegas was like, we don't know. But I think game 4, which we talked about a week ago, the one I went to at the Intuit, and the way the Nuggets played in that game, the desperation they had, where Jokic, Gordon, Murray, were all of them were like, we have to win this, and they win it on this crazy alley oop. But the desperation they showed in that game versus the desperation or lack of desperation the Clippers had yesterday was pretty telling. And I don't know what happened. I don't know whether the Clippers wore out. It's an older team, maybe playing on Thursday, maybe the Denver altitude, maybe they kind of deep down knew they missed their shot in the series. But that third quarter, which I asked her to rewatch this morning, the first 5 minutes of the third quarter for the Clippers was one of the most putrid, embarrassing displays of basketball on both ends I can remember, because it was an 8-point game. Kawhi hit a 3. And then for the next 4 minutes, they just took a complete shit on both ends. And there's 20 mistakes. It's just awful. And that was it. That was their season over in 4 minutes, basically. It was really bad. And I don't know what they do now.
I thought the Clippers were going to win the series. Back to that closing part of it, it's like you realize how bad Denver is defensively. I didn't like their defensive options, and I think we're going to see those exploited again on the perimeter against the OKC team that has its shit together, certainly more so than the Clippers do. Um, I watched the third quarter again this morning because you asked me to, and you're like, what happened to you guys? Like, I know they were kind of like trying to figure out how to like the done parts that were good defensively. Clearly, he was the guy that was getting exposed as they ignored him offensively.
Yeah.
I think Zoo is a great story this year. I thought Jokic fought him way better in Game 7 than maybe you'd expect. There's some really good Jokic numbers as far as like defensively, what the averages would be for the Clippers at the rim against
Yeah.
everybody. And so,
He gets some
that's
big
always
steals too.
that's the thing with him is he's at least positioned better. And it was funny because he was just so bad defensively in that first half of the game they ended up winning. But I have a lot on Harden if you want to do it. I just don't know that like I have stuff specific to the third quarter, but it's just crazy to see the cycle of the Harden conversation happen all over again. It's like, who's even, what is the debate anymore? Like at this point, I actually have sympathy because
Well, it's
clearly
weird
there's
because
something.
he had assists in the first half,
He had 10.
which kind of shielded some of the stuff that he did that fucked him over in that first half, like just not running back on defense, being lazy, in a bunch of different ways with specific plays. And then in the third quarter, he's like, I'm taking it up 2 notches. And he was so bad for 5 minutes.
He played, so I went through it and I was really focusing on him. You knew it was bad. Like you can just tell if you've watched it enough, you can tell. You can see it and you go, "Uh-oh, this is a problem." His first technical shot, his first actual shot of the game was about 55 seconds left to go in the first quarter. He had gotten free throws on that bullshit arm hook thing that he does at about the 2 minute mark. He had let Watson get behind him after a make. Like you didn't, there was no one else in the area other than just, I'll let a super athletic guy just kind of get behind me because whatever. He played the entire 12 minutes. I counted the number of times he actually got inside the 3 point line, and I'm not talking like a foot over the line. I'm talking like got into the offense. Of all of their possessions in the third quarter, he stepped inside the 3 point line 3 times. One was an atrocious lob attempt. There was another play where he was on the right side, and there was another one where he played for free throws on a foul. He was hoping to get fouled on this layup
Yeah.
going up against Jamal Murray, and he lost it. So, all right, he doesn't want to shoot. Fine. He doesn't want to move. Fine. I mean, he's standing
And
by the
they're
ball.
killing him on defense.
Right. He's standing on the ball arena logo, which is like by the coach's box. And he just can't. There's one play where Kawhi gets totally shut off in the paint. He's like at the free throw line. He's at the paint. Denver scrambling on defense. And he looks to Harden. And all Harden had to do was take 2 steps just to get there as a possible option to catch at the 3 point line. And Harden couldn't even move in from the 5 feet there. There's something that happens with him where his regular season brain and his approach to dissecting everything, there is a speed difference. There's a process because obviously, look, Austin Rivers was just on with me last week saying he's one of the 3 smartest players he's ever played with. And I'll give it to him because you see the moments where he's diagnosing everything that's going to happen and how the help and which matchup makes more sense. But there is something that happens to him when he is in these high leverage moments that he's just clearly uncomfortable. So it's like, okay, you don't want to shoot, you don't want to move. Can you at least be positioned somewhere? The Aaron Gordon tip in, he just lets him just step right in front of him.
Stop
And look,
boxing out dudes. It's not,
every
yeah, it's not just basketball. It's like it's the same fight we just watched from the Warriors. You watch and you go, where's the fight? This is game 7. You're going home if you lose this game. You realize that, right? And you just don't see it. You saw it in game 6. Game 6, he came
did,
out,
yeah.
he was
Hey,
aggressive, he was attacking, and it was like, oh, this guy really cares if they win today. Game
he
7, it didn't seem
saved
like he cared.
that Sixers series against the Celtics a few years ago. He saved their ass a couple of those games early on. And as
Right.
somebody who's been well positioned on this, like I remember being on Sports Center 10 years ago going, yeah, something's wrong here. And people were like, oh, he had a concussion. It was like that Spurs series, remember?
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? You think he has a concussion? So that's what happened. And it's like, okay, well, what about this year? What about this year? What about the Warriors series? What about the 18 closeout game? What about the 19 closeout? Like it just goes on and on and on. And I don't know why it keeps happening, but it's like, okay, so you don't want to shoot. Like whatever it is, you're not comfortable. At least do something else. And I think it's a really good lesson in the first half tonight of where Steph is struggling and nothing is easy and he can't get an open look. And it's like, okay, but there's still a bunch of other ways I can
Right. He's
impact this
rebounding,
game.
he's playing defense, he's scrapping, he's trying to create stuff. Well, so our friend Zach Lowe, when he wrote his Harden playoff piece, that was heading into round 2 of the Lakers series in 2020.
When they won game one.
And he had in that piece, he had in 15 games facing elimination since 2013, Harden 90 assists, 79 turnovers, 40% field goal. The crunch time stuff was really bad, 38%. 9 for 50 on threes in crunch time during that stretch, right?
Damn.
Well, since then, 20, that's 6 more playoff exits. These were his elimination game totals. He had 30 points in the Lakers one that they lost, 6 turnovers. 22 and 21. He had 11 in the closeout in 22, 9 and 23, 16 and 24, and 7 in this game. But the total shots, he averaged 16 a game, 9.3 assists, 31 for 81 field goals, and 9 for 42 3-points. So one thing that definitely happens is you can't make threes in these big games. But then if you go further, this is just statistically one of the best offensive players of all time. Like I looked at how many guys have averaged 24 points a game just for their career, who have played 1,000 games or more, and it's 11. It's Jordan, Wilt, Durant, LeBron James, Oscar, Karl Malone, Kobe, Dominique, Steph Curry, Kareem, and James Harden. That's why we talk about this, because that's how good the stats are. You go to the playoffs, and there's only 16 guys who have played at least 140 games and average 22 a game or more. And they're all guys who won titles: Jordan, Durant, West, LeBron, Curry, Hakeem, Kobe, Dirk. Malone's the first one who didn't. Kareem, Shaq, Larry, Wilt, Harden, Wade, Havlicek. So he statistically resides in this area with all of these great guys who have all won titles. And yet his legacy is over and over again. The worst possible things happen at the worst time for him. And we could talk about legacy and whether it actually matters, because I think what we've learned the last 10 years is sometimes the legacy stuff doesn't matter as much and people choose to remember or forget what they want. But, Zach was saying 4 or 5 years ago that this was the Karl Malone of guards, and it's worse now than it was when we were talking about it a few years ago. And this is it. What is he, 35, 36? He's been in the league 16 years. It's not going to get better. This is just a legacy. And the Clippers, you combine that with the Clippers, and it's unbeatable.
I wasn't even, the reason it used to get me more passionate was because what he was doing in the regular season, people were like, putting these numbers up there going like, look at this. I mean, top 5 MVP or top 3 MVP finishes, like 5 straight years. Maybe it was top 4 finishes.
Yeah.
And so when you look at those stretches, you start going like, okay, where's this guy going to end up? And without the ring, we're pretty resistant to let you hang out at that top tier neighborhood. But
make the finals.
Yeah, look, I think the other thing that we learned through those years too was that that's where the usage part of it comes in. Is if an entire season is dedicated to you having the ball every single minute to like absurd historic levels, and you're putting up all these points, like that's cool. But
and you're playing a different team every game versus
Right.
the same team 7 times in a row.
Yeah, is that going to translate? Is that going to be the best thing? I mean, again, I don't mean to bring up the Westbrook stuff because, he was great. He was great in the elimination game. Tons of energy. Good for him. But there was this regular season thing that was happening in those OKC games that once they got into the playoffs, you're like, oh, so now we don't just stand around and wait for him to do something, because Westbrook had such an advantage because of how athletic he was. And Harden had this statistical advantage because he was going to make threes. He's terrific if you send help. He's terrific on the lobs. He lives at the free throw line. So like those prime years for him would give him the profile of somebody really, really special. And I figured at some point he would probably just have a great elimination game because he was fucking due. Like this is over a decade, man. Like that Spurs series that I'm just thinking about again.
That was the point of Zach's column in 2020. He's like, why haven't we had our James Harden playoff moment yet? And we've had 6 playoffs since he wrote that column. I'm mailing you. I'm texting you. Check your text.
I mean, even when they beat OKC in 20 before they lost to the Lakers in 5, he was 4 of 15, 1 of 9 from 3.
I just texted you what I'm about to run through. This is the James Harden. This is the levels of the bad James Harden closeout games. I'm gonna rank them. James Harden closeout terrible games ranked. 2017 Game 6 Spurs, I think was the worst one ever. This was the
He's
one where
two for 11, right?
they lost by 39 at home, 2 for 11. He was 1 for 2 in the first half, field goal wise, as San Antonio went up by 18. And by the way, Kawhi Leonard did not play. Did not play in the game because he was hurt. The next one is the 2023 Game 6, Game 7, the Boston combo, where they blew Game 6, lost by 9. He was 4 for 16, 0 for 6 from 3, 5 turnovers, 1 for 6 in the second half. They lost
And
Game 7 by 24. He was 3 for 11 in that game with 5 turnovers.
and you could see from the first drive where he had to make a decision with the ball, you're like, oh, I don't think
You kind
he's,
of know right
yeah.
away.
Yeah. And this is a series where he had 45 in game one and won the overtime game with
Right, he was awesome.
42 when Embiid wasn't even, I think, had missed one of those games, right?
Yeah. Next one, 2015 Game 5 Warriors, round 3, conference finals. They lost by 14. He was 2 for 11 with 12 turnovers. They were down 6 at halftime. He was 0 for 5 in the second half. So you have that. I put this is a game they won, but 2015 Game 6 Clippers round 2, which they ended up winning by 12. He was 5 for 20 in the game. Bench for the comeback.
Yeah. The bench
They
for
were
the comeback's
40.
one of the all-timers.
They hit a four. They Houston's 40-15. They won that 40-15. They won the fourth quarter. Harden never played. He was 1 for 7 in that game. The Game 7 this year, 2 for 8 field goals, 7 points. Denver goes plus 60 in the third quarter. He's 0 for 2 field goals in that game. And then there's other ones. There's 22 Game 6 Miami. They lose by 9. He's 0 for 2 in the second half field goals. Last year, Game 6 Dallas, round 1, they lose by 13. He's 0 for 6 from 3, 5 for 16. It goes on and on. The point is there's not a lot of good ones. And there's not even a lot of decent ones. And there's no great one. And in fact, probably the most honorable one he has was that year when they played the Bucks when he had the hammy and they lost in OT. And he was 5 for 17, but he had 22 points. He got to the line. He had 9 assists. Remember, he was playing on one leg.
Yeah.
That was probably the most admiration I've had for him in one of these games. But look, people are going to remember what they want to remember. But I'm going to remember that this is a guy that you're just like, I'm so mad I didn't bet on Denver in Game 7. When you think of the Clippers piece combined with the fact that the Clippers needed Harden to really come through in a big game. He's just never done it
But see, that's
in
what's
those
so crazy
states.
is all of these other games, for the most part. I mean, granted, you can argue Embiid's importance in the 23 series. The funniest thing, too, is because I'm looking through the game log, too. When they swept Brooklyn in
Yeah,
the game 4 closeout, he was 4-18 in 40 minutes. He was,
right.
and like they didn't need him, obviously, because they swept that Nets team. But I at least felt with this one, because I knew and I had said it, I'm like, to pick. And it wasn't like I was picking Harden against Jokic, because really it's about Kawhi and it's about Zubats and it's about the team. It's about how great they had been defensively, and it felt like they had really figured some of this stuff out. I don't even know who was left to argue with. I mean, you could find somebody. Over the years, there was always people from Houston arguing about this stuff all the time. You're just like, all right, cool, man. Like, whatever. Like,
The
we just
argument
see
was what he did in Game 6. He was really, really good in Game 6, right? That was
game six of
three
what?
days ago in the Denver series, the one
Oh,
Thursday
this
night.
one.
He was
Right.
really good in that game. So the
Well, because
argument would be like, hey, he was really good in Game 6. Couldn't it happen again? And the answer was it can't.
okay. And I think to be fair to Harden, you got to admit that they unloaded the clip in game 6 and then to turn
And
around
he's
and play in
old.
games.
Yeah, he's
Right.
an older player. He's playing in
That's,
altitude. I get it.
I would not lead my show with this today, because if he were 30 and he were the number one option and getting MVP votes,
Yeah.
then I would be like I was a few years ago. But I'm pointing to the stuff that's frustrating, because it's like, all right, if you don't have the offensive part of it, doesn't mean you don't have to do any of the other stuff. You just decide I'm going to stop moving. But I'm, again, like I said, I'm more sympathetic this time around because he's not the number one option. He's not in the MVP conversation. I mean, he might make all NBA.
But
Um,
they really needed him though
they
in this
needed something.
series.
They
They
needed
needed
him.
a
If he
catalyst.
if he was spent, he's played this game long enough. He needed to figure out a way to be like, okay, I'm like, dude, it looks like he's saving himself the entire time he's out there. But be calculated about what your team needs from somebody who's been in this many playoff games. And you want to wonder if Ty Lue is watching this going, Do we need him out there for all 12 minutes
Was he
here?
going to put in Corey Brewer? Josh Smith? Think Amir Coffey is playing Corey Brewer? Maybe. Ben Simmons is Josh Smith. Oh my God, he just hit a three.
I think it's
Look,
pronounced Smith.
Harden's been in the league 16 years, and it's a lot to ask for him to outplay Jokic in a game seven. But it leads to a pretty good what do you do conversation if you're the Clippers.
Okay,
Because
real quick though. I think this is the
you couldn't
important
get
thing.
through round one. Go ahead.
I have to pretend, but Pop Simmons, you've got your compound, who knows, maybe Montana for you. And
Montana.
the
Yeah.
grandkids come to visit
Yeah.
and they go, Pop, tell us about James. Tell us about James Harden. What are you going to say to your grandkids?
Good question.
Do it in a
Um,
grandfatherly voice if you could.
One of the best left-handed players I've ever seen.
Good start.
Uh, Recreated offensive basketball in a couple of different ways. Was one of the best two guards of the 21st 25 years of the 21st century. Put up huge stats, and his teams were always good. And something would happen to him in playoff series that none of us could really fully understand. And by the way, the same thing could be said about Karl Malone, but at least Karl Malone made the finals twice as the best guy on a finals team. Did I think he was going to come through in those games? I did not. But at least he was able to get that far, and he won some big playoff series, and Harden, Zach wrote that piece 6 years ago. What's the James Harden playoff moment? We still don't have it. I was thinking about this stuff because I was thinking about it in the context of Carmelo, right? Because I think Carmelo has had a nice little resurgence post-career, and he's I think a popular ex-star, right? And I think people remember his Knicks era really fondly. He won one playoff series with the Knicks.
Yeah.
If you go through Carmelo in the playoffs, he starts out with 5 straight first round exits. And I'm a Carmelo fan. I was the one who wrote the Carmelo column about how I felt like he had a chance to be on that level, and he was just bad luck with his
It's
teams.
my homepage.
5 straight first round exits. He lost 18 of his first 21 playoff games. In the 2009 playoffs, they won 2 rounds, lost to LA in 6. They lost in the first round the next year to Utah. His career record in Denver, playoff record, 2 for 7 in playoff series, 15-28 career record. Goes to the Knicks, 3 years, 1 for 3 in playoff series, 7-14 is his record, averaged 28 a game, and then missed the playoffs the next 4 years. And now Brunson is hot this year, and people are like, who's better? Who's the greatest Nick ever, him or Carmelo? Because people can't remember anything. So that bringing my point back to James Harden, maybe people won't remember 10 years from now. They'll be like, oh yeah, the beard, he was awesome. They're not going to remember any of this stuff because they
Yeah,
certainly
but
don't remember any of it
Carmelo,
with Carmelo.
I'm pushing back on this. I agree with Carmelo. I
Please.
think he's an incredibly likable guy, but Carmelo doesn't have the failures at the highest moments. Like this is like not making fun of the
No,
Broncos before Elway had
but I'm just
happened. It's
saying
like continuing to
but
make fun of
he
the
didn't really
Bills.
have any success like from a playoff standpoint as a player. But I think now as the years pass, people feel like he was on like that LeBron Wade level in some ways. My point is, if you actually go through it, like it's pretty grim.
But I think you're missing my point is that failing consistently with this many eyes on you later, Los Warriors
Right.
failures, everybody missing threes. I mean, even though he had 30 in the closeout game in 18,
Two for
I don't know
13
that.
from three.
Yeah, I don't know that you felt great about him necessarily in that
I
game.
feel 100 times worse about Harden. I'm just saying, like, I just wonder with legacy sometimes when people are like, legacy, 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 legacy. We don't even do a good job of remembering what legacies were or what happened in somebody's career. I think
Sure.
Carmelo had a lot of bad luck. Teammates, he pushed his way to the Knicks and they traded all these guys back to Denver. But for the most part, for what his talent was to never make a finals, to be in one round three, like it's kind of disappointing in retrospect because I thought he was one of the best guys of that generation. And he's the one that nothing really happened.
Yeah, if you go through the Carmelo thing, because I used to argue with Knicks fans that like turned on him big time. Like they ended up really turning on him.
Yeah.
I think it's that Pacer series, speaking of the Pacers again. But if you go through all of Carmelo's playoff exits, and I promise, like I don't know how many people would actually do it. more often than not, the team they were going up against, you weren't going to pick that Carmelo's team to beat that team. Like I think
Right.
there's a Jazz series in there, maybe, or the records were pretty
The
even.
Clippers
So
series. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he won 3 playoff series in his career. He's 22 for 42 in the playoffs. Um, but
I
that's the
think
thing is I think
James,
as the years pass, people remember what they want to remember. And the Twitter videos and the social media stuff becomes as big a part of somebody's legacy as anything else. And I think James will probably be okay, big picture, because the stats are going to have him. Look at Karl Malone. You and I were there for the Karl Malone era. And now the years pass and people are like, yeah, Karl Malone's stats. Holy shit. Wow. Made the finals twice. It's like, all right, well, you wouldn't want to throw in the ball with 18 seconds left. You just wouldn't have.
game 4, maybe with Harden, because that's what I
Yeah.
like to remember about Jim.
Well, Jim
Down
Harden.
115, 113. Sixers need it. Harden 3-pointer wins it in overtime.
Hmm.
I think he ended up with what, 42 in that game.
Big game, Jimmy. Well, big picture, what do you do if you're the Clippers? What do you do?
Well, Kawhi's not
If
going anywhere 2 years.
Harden has got a $36 million player option. They have Powell and Bogdanovich and Eubanks and Batum for $46 million expiring next year. So they could put contracts together. They don't really have any picks to move. They could put together some contracts and take somebody else's high salaried problem, or somebody who's a little expensive that maybe somebody wants to dump because they're tanking. But it's do we run back this team and be like, hey, we lost to the best offensive player since Jordan, basically, in round 1 and 7. Let's not overreact. Or do you overreact?
Are they going to have the option to overreact? And I would say this is just the headline to all of this offseason stuff that I want to get into with you that I know you're excited about, but just in
Yeah.
general. When you look at the free agent list, it's terrible. Okay.
Well, it's
And
more
then,
of the player acquisition list. It's
sure.
can you
Okay.
talk yourself into Zion? Can you talk yourself into Trae Young? There's 8 of those guys.
Yeah, I think that's what
Sabonis. What's he up to?
you're right. That's the exciting part of it. There's a really exciting version of this summer for the NBA, but more often than not, like history tells us, it's not just all of a sudden every GM's like, let's just get wild with this and start changing out our dudes, and we'll just keep running it
Yeah.
back. So the fact that you have Kawhi under contract for 2 more years at 50 million, everything still kind of revolves around him because I don't even know what the market would be for him. And as you pointed out, they're not like they can't just like tear this whole thing and necessarily start all over. I don't know if Harden's going to opt out because of the over 38 rule if they extend him. Like, is he probably thinking in the back of his head, this league still owes him money because of the Philadelphia thing?
I just think he's got to opt in at the 36. You have to.
But he could opt out and go, fine.
You
You
can't
know
do that
what?
again. He did that the last time.
No, but if he already understands, like, all right, how about I figure out a way to give us, because I think last season was, they were smart about the Paul George thing. They
How
were
much
right.
money
A
can
lot of,
James Harden give away?
I'm talking about opting out of the player option at 36 million and then doing a 3-year extension and then having the number be less each year. So it's like, okay, James, like, why don't we do it this way? And maybe there's more flexibility. But they've done a good job of kind of resetting the financial restrictions here because depending on, the options and who they want to keep around here. But you seem to be completely either not being with me on this Harden thing at all. Do you not understand, like, just opting
No,
out
I
and
do
taking a less
understand.
average annual salary for a couple more
But now I'm
years?
in business with James Harden for 3 more years. I,
Well, I
I
know he
don't
didn't
know.
make a compelling case of wanting to be in a long-term relationship with him the last few minutes, but I don't know what their options
To
are.
say the least.
Yeah.
We just went through it for 8 minutes.
So
And
who
now I
would
have
they
to bring him
trade?
back for 3 years. I would do 36 million if you opt in. Okay, let's see how it goes. And then I have him. I have all these expirings, and I can get a little frisky either before the season or heading into February. Because the best thing that happened to them is Kawhi and how good Kawhi was, I think, the last 3 months of this season, combined with Zubats, had the foundation of something and have some flexibility. And they have but it's a front office you and I both really respect. Like, I feel like they're going to figure out they have options.
I don't think they have a lot of options though.
But that doesn't mean you have to give James Harden 100 million for 3. Like, we'll shave 5 million off your deal. But
I wasn't talking about 100 million.
what would you do? If he's going to opt out of his 36, then you're talking about like those deals like what like CJ McCollum did, some other people where it's
Would
like
you
I'll
sit?
have to
Would you
have a
do?
loan.
What if he says I'll opt out? I'll do 3 years, 70 million.
Oh, now you have my attention.
That's what I'm
Why would he do
talking about.
that? Would he do
Well,
that?
do you think he would? What do you think he signs for after another year? He'll be 37 that summer. Do you think he's making
Listen,
30 million a year?
you're asking me to figure out the motivations of somebody who's passed up two giant max deals over the last 6 years to
Well,
take
we
less
know I
money
did
each
it in
time.
Philly.
Yeah, no, I get it. Um, well, the bigger question for me is you're in the West. You're in the same division or the same conference as OKC, who's just a fucking nightmare. You're in the same conference as Minnesota, who's a fucking nightmare. You have Wemby and San Antonio with these draft picks and cap space. You have Luka on the Lakers. Like you go on through, it's a nightmare conference. And you just and Jokic, who just beat you. I don't know. You're in no man's land. But the owner just flew 200 fans to Denver for game 7. Like
What was
he's
that
gonna
flight
think they
like
have a
on
chance
the
to
way
win
back?
it. Why was there more social media from the flight?
I want a
Just
piece. I
silence.
want to read that on the Athletic. The flight home. Like, are we landing in?
Maybe it's a documentary.
We're landing in Barstow, by the way.
I think it's one of those guys you have to find your own way home. Denver
Yeah.
airport's over there. So
Uh,
you're trying to do 370 for Harden
I
and
mean,
then
maybe that's nuts, but like Harden next year, 37, coming off the 36 million. Who knows? Does he look at it as like I'm going to get another 40 million guaranteed on the books right now? Maybe he thinks, hey, that's ridiculous. I can do another 3 for 75 after that, keeping this high average annual for this one. The chances are is that he's on the team. Kawhi's on the team, so that's whatever this is. It's like 80 plus million with those two dudes. They don't have a young player that you're really excited about that maybe can entice a vet to say, I want to be traded there because it's LA and it's a great coaching
yeah.
staff and front
It is
office and great
LA.
ownership.
Good arena.
There's a lot of stuff about it that feels really attractive for the next guy that's mad, but it's not a great group on the court to be mad enough to be like, I'm going there.
You had to do a pie chart of this will be better next year, this will be the same, or ooh, this will be worse. I think the ooh, this will be worse is 60% of the pie, right? Because you basically have to get another healthy Kawhi season. I have no idea how many of those are left. You're never getting a better Zubac season. You got Norm Powell
Well,
in a
you might get the
contract year.
same.
You might
And
get the same. You're not getting a better season.
I mean, unless you wanted to trade Zoo, can you get creative with a Zoo norm?
I Zoo's like I thought it's weird. His stats went down as the series went along, but I really respected how he went at Jokic.
Yeah, I
I
loved
don't
him
know
in
where
the
the
series.
rebounding was for him. I thought he was a better rebounder in the regular season than he was in the playoffs. But I think when you play Jokic for 2 straight weeks, I think it starts to break your brain after a while. If you're actually you're in charge of defending him and stopping him. Can you imagine that? The response, but just like going to sleep and being like, yeah, I got to play Jokic again tomorrow. Like how, like that's like 3 hours sleep. Just lying in bed staring at the ceiling, like fucking A. Um, Next team for what do you do?
So basically, we agree though on the Clippers. Like you didn't have some magic crazy scenario here because when I
Now
was doing it
it's
out this morning, I'm like, I don't really know how
the
different it's going to
crazy
be.
scenario is do you take a big contract from somebody that somebody is like kind of excited to get off of? Like whatever this year's version of Brandon Ingram is, and Brandon Ingram didn't get traded. Do you talk yourself into a Brandon Ingram type? Somebody who's available and expensive, you know? That's the question for me. I don't know who that is yet because we haven't seen. First of all, the playoffs have to shake out a certain way. Somebody might tail out in the second, in the second round. Who knows? The Pistons get really interesting because they have Hardaway and Schroeder and Beasley all as unrestricted free agents. They have Tobias on a 26.6 expiring. And they have Ivy coming back.
Dave Harris?
They do. And you could talk me into, hey, let's just keep the trains moving. The thing I would recommend them not doing is overreacting to how the playoffs went and doing new, longer, big deals with Beasley and Hardaway and Schroeder and being like, we have our nucleus. I would go the hired gun route for those. But this is an interesting KD destination. So let's talk about it.
We were talking about, hey, how do you feel about the Rockets, right? What's the grade you give them? And it sucks right now, but the season was a success. Detroit, you got to feel great about this. And I think they battled with New York to even a higher level. There's a couple things where this breaks maybe to a game 7. So I thought they competed to a level that I didn't know that they were going to get to against the Knicks. And I'm totally with you. Like, I think because of the free agent class being so bad, but then, are the Nets going to sign Malik Beasley to a huge contract? And then after the
Right.
Nets, you look at who has available cap space. Detroit has cap space, but with Cade's new deal, because he's going to make all
Kicks in.
NBA,
Yeah.
it's going to be 19 million in cap space as opposed to 24. Chicago's got 20 million in cap space. Memphis has like 17 and a half. There's like 5 teams that have between 15 and 12 million, and then you kind of run out of teams. So you start going, okay, if we know something about this year with Detroit, it's that spacing around Cade is really, really important. And as much as we all love Durant, he's not going to provide that spacing ever. So you really have to make sure that rotationally around that, you're doing those kinds of things. But Beasley's season this year, I'd be scared to death of what that price tag ends up being, because another team may just say, screw it, let's throw him a crazy contract because he was so good this year from 3, when I don't even know that I
Right.
necessarily trust him. So, Hardaway was a bigger number. I'd have to keep one of those guys. They can get creative because of their own cap space and how they want to structure those
But
contracts.
Hardaway was an old contract, so he was like 16, 17 million range. He's not
It was
seeing that again.
16.
He's now a 6 to 8 million player, I think, in the market.
I'd rather pay him 6 to 8 than pay Beasley what I think might be a scary number from the one other team that goes, we've got this cap space, let's just use it on somebody, and look at all the threes that he made. The biggest part of this is that Ivy's going to come back. And it's easy to forget that
Yes.
Ivy in 30 games shot 41% from 3. He was terrific. And I think in the playoffs, it shows. As tough as Schroeder was, and he was big for them, and he fights like crazy because clearly he takes the Brunson thing personal.
Yeah.
Uh, Ivy being a second on ball creator and getting his own at his size and his athleticism, I think that's actually going to solve some of the problem, especially if that 3-point shooting holds up. So we know Cade needs spacing. I would not be in any kind of hurry to mess with this. Houston, I
Okay.
think, is on a different timeline because they have all these different guys that they still probably don't even know who they want to make decisions on, or maybe they do. But there's not necessarily enough assets for Detroit to have to get as creative as Houston could potentially get. I would really just be steady here if I were Detroit, making sure I don't let all of this shooting leave. But I think I'm probably going to be scared off by the Beasley price tag.
So Phoenix calls and says, Tobias and Thompson and Fontecchio actually works in the trade machine with KD, and throw us some picks and let's start talking. You have the meeting? You have the internal meeting with the rest of the front office trying to figure it out.
You definitely have a meeting. I
KD
still
one
think
year left.
you have to have a meeting even if a men is asked for in the Houston one. But you seem
I'm
to
saying,
think
do you
that that's
have
like
do you have a small meeting with like your inner circle, or do you keep it open and invite a bunch of people?
what is it again?
Do you have a catered lunch for the meeting? How
Little Caesars. Yeah, probably get a deal. What is it again? Fontecchio, which obviously gets me
just
excited.
Tobias Fontecchio, but Thompson would be the big piece, and then you throw a bunch of picks.
You got to
Anyway,
throw a
you
bunch
do
of picks in
three
there.
firsts and two swaps, whatever the fuck it is, for 3 years of KD. And then you bring in KD for 50 plus million. You sign him for the 2 year extension, so it's 150 million commitment. I personally wouldn't do it. I would just
Why?
keep the because I don't think they're gonna win the title or come close with any sort of trade. The only one that I think you really have to think about is if they could get Giannis, and it's a mortgage to farm thing, and basically everybody's available except Cade. Like Durant and Thompson are in it. Tobias's contract is in it. Fontecchio's in it. Picks are in it. You're just like, we're going all in on Giannis, and we're gonna have a Giannis Cade franchise, and we'll be able to fill it around. We'll be able to fill around those two guys, and actually try to win the title.
You could have the Tigers too. I mean, if you're talking about Cade and Giannis on pick and roll lobs,
Yeah,
I'm
you're probably
fine.
throwing in some Tigers, maybe a couple Red Wings, but
Uh,
but yeah,
I
I
would
don't.
The Durant thing really hinges more on like, hey, what's the history here? Is he super happy everywhere he goes? So I think I'd be a little cautious if I were Detroit. Granted, we're talking about a team that just won their first playoff game since 2008, which seems just impossible.
So
Um,
we agree. Take your time, Detroit. This like maybe even target February as let's see where we are in February and maybe we have some expiring, so we have some stuff. I would not overpay Beasley. I'd probably go 2 years for him. Maybe like a 30 for two. 30 for two. Maybe Hardaway 2 for 16. Try to do something like that. You bring Ivy back.
would you do? Hmm, I was looking at this.
You have another trade for me?
Yeah. Is there? No, I'm not even going to do it. I'm not going to do
Okay.
it. This is stupid.
Can you give me the player you were thinking about? Was it Jaylen?
Jaylen Green, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. I'm always nervous you're going to suggest a Jaylen Brown trade. Um,
I have a few I've thought
Lakers.
about. Yeah.
LeBron has a $52 million player option.
Yep.
Kleba and Vincent, 22.5 million combined expiring. Rui's on an 18.3 expiring. Finney Smith's on a 15.4 expiring. This is all next year. And then Reeves is 14 and then 15. So they have some flexibility. Kept a couple picks. They clearly need a center and a rim runner. My question would be, would you trade Reeves? If you get a real some sort of rim protector, somebody like a richer man's Miles Turner in that range. Would you trade Reeves, or do you feel like you could build around Luka, Reeves, and 41-year-old LeBron, and then there's something there to try to win multiple playoff rounds?
The first
And
thing's going to be LeBron's number. Because depending on now, granted, he took just a sliver to keep them away from the most restrictions. And then there's a bunch of people being like, see, it's like, well, all right.
well,
And I'm
then they
not
drafted his son and gave him a 4-year no-cut contract.
right. If he stays at around 50 million, they're going to be, I would say, on the practical things that would happen here, they're going to be 6, 7 million below the first apron. So if that puts him as his tax team, I don't know what kind of big you're signing for a $5 to $6 million tax mid level.
You
Again,
know
if
what
they're
season it is though right now? It's ridiculous trades on social media for centers they'll never get. It's like they should get Bam Adebayo. It's like, oh, cool.
well, they're a little
How they
emboldened
doing
right
that?
now. I mean, basically, Jokic, once the coach was fired, was in the Lakers jersey, and now Giannis has been in one. And as
Yeah.
much as
They should
you'd
get
like to say,
Giannis.
yeah, like I don't even know how they get Miles Turner.
I don't know how they get anybody. I mean,
Well,
how they get
anybody is a
somebody is
stretch.
if you have the two expirings. I mean, they could, the thing is with all the expirings, they can work toward any kind of number, right? So could they get Sabonis?
Okay, but what is going out that's exciting? Because this is where it comes back to the Austin Reeves thing, which I don't think they would want to do because he's really good and he's 26 years old. But if they thought, okay, what could we do to shake things up? Like as a Bam, like would you do Austin Reeves for Bam just in a vacuum
No.
if you were the Lakers?
No, I wouldn't do it if I'm Miami. I'm not doing that in a million years. Why am I trading Bam for Austin Reeves?
I'm just trying to see where your head's at with this.
I was thinking Sabonis, I thought was an interesting one because
For
if I'm
Reeves?
Sacramento, no,
All right, God.
if I'm Sacramento, I put together this team that clearly doesn't work. I'm paying Sabonis more money than he's worth for somebody who's basically, if he's your most expensive guy, you're going to be a slightly better than 500 team. You're probably not going to have a huge playoff upside, and you're going to get torched defensively unless you put the perfect amount of guys around him. And could you give them a get out of jail free card with that Sabonis contract? Be like, we'll give you all expirings and a couple firsts, and you can get out of Sabonis. I don't know if the Kings are at that point with that contract yet. They might not be.
Um, I
Look at
mean,
the
it is
contract.
it
It's
is
it's
nasty. It's
it's
43,
pretty
6,
nasty.
47, and then 50.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay,
But I'll tell
so
you this, paying LeBron $52 million when he's 41 years old is fucking crazy. That's a lot of money.
but if you get the year you just got from him, he's worth it. I mean, I know the playoffs didn't close the way everybody expected. I think that's another reason of like even talking about Houston and Golden State. Like you can sit here and make fun of, oh, look at this Lakers group. They didn't even get out of the first round. This first round was all of this stuff was on the table. And granted, it was 5 games and it
Yeah.
fell over the course of the 5 games. They weren't even close. I think it's a bad draw for the Lakers now that we saw it actually play out, even though nobody felt that way. Very few people felt that way at the beginning of it. I don't really know. I mean, we keep writing these teams down like, what would you do? What would you do? I think they need to figure out a way to try to get cheap rim runners like a baseball team that doesn't love their starters 3, 4, and 5, and then just all of a sudden you're like, Al Leiter's still around? Like you signed this guy? Like the Walker Kessler shit doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I don't think Dalton Connect gets Kessler done.
Well, I was
Granted,
thinking with Utah, who has too many guys plus a bunch of picks. And
right.
if they floated Austin Reeves to Utah, what's the reaction? Like that's one where you could get a 3-for-1 and a 4-for-1 and picks. It's like,
That feels
whoa,
weird. They already have
Austin Reeves.
Filipowski.
We could put Austin Reeves, Filipowski, and Kessler
Could they Hoosier it out if they get
and
Cooper Flag?
Markkinen, and we could have Cooper Flag.
Just
I think Reeves on that contract making
just
14
Will
and
Hardy going teams on the floor.
I think uh I think Reeves at 14 and 15 when you throw expirings with him, you could get some really good players at that point. I don't know if you could get Bam Adebayo.
You're with me though. It's an automatic no from Miami, as much as we love
Yeah,
Reeves. Okay.
automatic.
Okay. Um,
Automatic.
can you think of anything where if you're the Lakers, you go, now I have to think about this a little bit.
Embiid.
That's something the Lakers would like traditionally do. Um, I think the
Talk about get
Sixers
out of jail free cards.
I think the
If they
Sixers
were
would do it in a
like,
second, by the
we'll
way.
give you all of our
Yeah.
expirings and a first, and we'll get you out of the Joel Embiid business. Here's your get out of jail free card right now. You don't have to deal with them anymore.
I heard Embiid was available at the trade deadline. It'd be
What?
irresponsible to not even ask. Yeah, oh yeah.
Come on.
But I mean, like
Oh, we're getting on Hoops Hype tomorrow. Yeah, baby.
it
Hoops Hype.
may have been a would you? But I think
Wow.
this happens all the time. So it shouldn't be something that's that big of a deal.
Oh, we're getting
I don't
so aggregated. I'm
but I don't know
fucking
that you're
pumped.
doing your job. How are
We
you
say
doing your
something about
job?
Bobby Barack again. We could get aggregated by them too. Let's try and get aggregated. Think Barack will pick that up? Post?
Are you talking about Obama?
No, I'm talking about Embiid.
Oh.
Um,
You think it's surprising that Daryl would potentially float the idea
I
of
just
like,
hadn't
hey,
heard
would you
that. I
do
was excited about the info. I think Daryl talks to everybody all the time. I think he calls people constantly, and they're like, "Oh, fuck, Daryl's on the phone.
Tommy Shepard's like,
He's
I'm
going
not
through
in
wrestling.
charge of the Wizards anymore.
Stop bothering me."
Fuck.
Yeah. So, all right, that's my favorite Lakers move. All their expirings and 2 first-round picks, and they get Embiid. And Philly
So
just
not
gets
Reeves.
Reeves isn't in it.
Oh, Reeves isn't in it.
He's not
No.
in it. You don't even get Reeves. We don't know
I
if
think
Embiid's
they
ever playing again. I'm like, I'll take Embiid. You can have one of our first-round picks, and here's some bunch of expirings.
I think what they need to do is figure out a way to, and I don't know what's going to happen with all the decisions here, but if they're below the tax, can they use, the non-taxpayer mid-level is a decent, it's like 14 million. So could you go after, like, I know nobody likes Clint Capella anymore. He's 31 years old. You put Clint with Luca, does it work? Now his numbers decline, some of the advanced stuff declined. He also played less. It also felt like Atlanta was waiting forever to have Okongwu be the guy. And clearly he balances them out a little bit better offensively. So maybe Clint isn't worth it at this point. I don't know if
When
there's a
was the last
Jonathan.
time you got super excited watching Clint Capella play basketball? Was it
Hey,
in the
look,
last 3 years?
Jackson Hayes catching lobs from Luka in the beginning was exciting to Lakers fans. They're like, "Psh, unlock Jackson. This is awesome. What about Jonathan Isaac? Is there a Jonathan Isaac? But I don't know if
No.
Orlando wants to be in the Gabe Vincent business.
What about Mark Williams? Are we kindling?
Bataze. I'd be calling about Bataze. What about DeAndre Ayton?
Batase. Now we're
35,
talking.
35. Now I'm speaking your language.
Now, now we're talking. DeAndre Ayton. So a couple expirings. Do you think when they shop Rui around all summer while pretending that they really like him, they're just hoping nobody watches the rebounding in game 5? He was really good for us this year. Can we see the tape of game 5? It's been destroyed. We don't have it. Um,
Is there a Rui? Because there's nothing that screams Lakers more than
I
like
love the DeAndre Ayton idea. LeBron
massive
can teach him how
upgrade.
to win.
Right, right. So all this talent, still really young.
Yeah.
He's at 35 million. So you load up Rui, you throw in a pick, maybe a little Dalton Connect action in there,
Oh, Dalton.
right? So you start going,
I'm
okay, well,
going on the trade machine right now.
what's the point, right? Why does Portland want Rui? Well, maybe they don't want Rui, but is there some version of they're grabbing an asset of getting somebody out culture-wise, change of scenery. The change of scenery pieces for DeAndre Ayton in a Lakers uniform alone, those are gonna writers are gonna have beach houses. People clicking on those fucking things.
LeBron has wanted to play with somebody like this for his entire career.
Right. Aiton's never
New
played
athletic
with
piece.
Luca, and Luca's never played with a stretch five like
Luca still
this,
remembers how good Ayton was in their one
except for
playoff
Porzingis.
series.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Porzingis, yeah.
Made it to
So
an NBA Finals. Was too soon. Peyton, you know,
so you're saying Rui? I feel like I think they could keep Rui. I think they could get Ayton for Maxi Kleba, Gabe Vincent, and another contract and throw a first round pick. And Portland's super happy to dump that last Ayton year.
so just a first round pick.
Yeah. And I think I'd even say top 4 protected. Great. We solved the Lakers. Um, Milwaukee Bucks, I have no solution for. I really wanted to come on here and say something provocative and smart and forward thinking, and I don't know what it is. But the thing is, if Giannis says I don't want to be traded, then do you trade him? What if Giannis says I'm happy here, I don't want to leave
I
Milwaukee?
don't trade him. I don't take any calls.
Yeah, I don't either. My
Because
goal would be to keep Giannis.
the forgotten zone of this league is okay, we're screwed. And you laid it out perfectly last week. Like when you really dug into how bad the future
The
draft
picks,
stuff is
yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
So when you're married to having none of that coming in, then you can't. No one ever wants to hear it, but there's a lot of like honest conversations where teams, believe it or not, are opening the season going, all right, we have Giannis and we'll probably win like 45 to 48 games. And that's probably who we are. But at least we have Giannis. I mean, hell, Atlanta's been doing that with Trey this whole time. Charlotte's going to keep doing it. At least Giannis is one of the best players in the world. So if Giannis doesn't want to go anywhere, that's enough for me. And I just be like, all right, hopefully we can get competitive. And then 1 year is a short amount of time. Who knows what happens? The problem is for Giannis, and look, this might be a league-wide thing, but you know how we always talk about like, oh, this guy likes this guy, and that guy wants to go there, and Glenn Davis is now in Orlando because of this, and
Yeah.
they brought in Jarrett Jack because Chris Paul likes him. Like all of these things that we used to talk about. Granted, it was the big three in Miami, and then everybody trying to figure out how to team up and all that stuff. It feels like that doesn't necessarily happen as much anymore. So,
There's more
Jokic is,
animosity than we've had in a while.
but Jokic isn't going to be somebody who's going to be coming up through the AAU ranks and having those relationships with the other stars. I mean, every star who's like on the fence about sticking around should want to go play in Denver, but I don't know that he has the relationship with other players. I think the same goes for Giannis, and I just don't know a norm of this league. It doesn't feel like it's as normal as guys being like, "Hey, let's," like Paul George and Kawhi and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that we have that as much anymore. It doesn't mean it can't happen again, but if Giannis is just happy there, then that's enough for me if I'm running the Bucks. I don't care. Yeah, I know we're not going to win the title next year.
He'd have to ask out. And even if he asks out, I'm not trading him unless I can get a trade I'm pumped about. And that's it. I'm not gonna like give you away for 60 cents on the dollar because you don't want to play for us anymore. Like you signed an extension. Let me try to figure out a good trade for us. Can't figure it out. Let's take it into the season. and try to figure it out in the December, February range once 8 teams are unhappy with how their season is going, and then we'll do the trade. But you have our word. At some point, we're going to do it. Just keep playing hard, and we'll figure it out. And then you kind of keep your fingers crossed that Dame can come back from Achilles surgery in 5 months. Dame sets the record for coming back. They're they made 2 trades where they gave up an inordinate amount of picks for one player because they wanted to win the title, and they won the 2021 title. They couldn't win it with Dame, but they traded a shitload of draft picks. Like, this is what happens. If you're mortgaging all this stuff to win now, everyone forgets that part. It's like, oh man, they got to get Giannis some help. It's like, they did. They made 2 massive trades and gave away a bunch of assets to try to get him help. And now they're here. This is how it works. This is how the league works.
And they have Kuzma on the books.
Well, that one neither of us agreed with because we watch basketball. I don't know how anybody could watch basketball this season and thought Kuzma was going to make a difference.
That's a huge. I mean, he's like 23 million in the next 2 years. Or
The
excuse
only
me,
other one is
43
that
over the next 2. Yeah.
the Heat got knocked out, and I don't really know what the Heat do either. Where you have a Bam Hero Wiggins Foundation, right?
Wiggins,
he's still there.
all their guys are under contract. You want to go through a tough book here.
It's brutal.
Like Hero and Bam, fine. The fact that you're only going to be paying them, I think, before the Bam extension kicks in here, or because it's going to jump up. He's going to be like a $50 million a year player.
Hero got barbecued in the Cleveland series.
He did, but his shot making
is really good.
Pretty special.
Maybe he should be a 6th man.
He should be a 3rd option, I would say. But sometimes we look at guys and be like, okay, cool. It'd be awesome if we had 2 dudes that were better than him, and he would be our 3rd option. Bam is not enough offensively, as much as we all love him. They're on the books next year. They've got Wiggins for 28, and then a player option. Probably going to pick that one up. $30.1 million in 26-27. Terry Rozier's 26.6. Duncan Robinson, one of the few remaining early termination options, just at $19.8 million. Kyle Anderson's on the books for 9. So they have a bunch of contracts of dudes that probably are not in demand.
The Butler thing murdered them.
Unless somebody said, I am so mad, I have 1 year left, I'm only going there. Why are you going there? Because you love Bam and Tyler Hero?
The only reason I wouldn't count them out is just because they pulled rabbits out of the hat over and over again over the last 15 years. Every time we felt like they had hit rock bottom, then they'd make even the Butler thing, which is one of the craziest transaction sequences in the recent history of the league, and they pulled it off. And I still don't know how they got anyone to take Hassan Whiteside. I still don't understand it. But this time it seems bleak because I thought, that the one guy we didn't mention that I wonder is out there in some form, who I think would be considered a real asset, is Jaren Jackson. If Memphis is handcuffed at all by being able to spend as much money as it's going to take to keep him. If he makes All NBA this year and different triggers come in, I just monitoring that one.
I'd be happy to be in the Jaren Jackson business, even with his limitations. Well, I really started to like him even more this year, even though I know you get mad about his fouls, which you should get mad about his fouls. His fouls.
I know the rebounding makes me madder than the fouls. Can you get 9 rebounds?
I would say down 30 to OKC and running Jaren Jackson post-ups, clear out. Like, I don't really know what was going on there, but I mean, that series was such a mess.
I forgot to give you one Giannis situation. If OKC somehow lost this round or next round, huge upset loss, would Presti, who by the way has only made the finals once and lost the finals 4-1 and has not been back since, even though we all agree he's one of the best GMs of this century, but at some point he hasn't won titles or even finals games. I wonder if he would just be like, fuck it, and do like a giant Giannis thing. And if you're Giannis and you could go to OKC and be on this incredible team, like that's a team that's actually built to make a 160 cents on the dollar trade. They wanted to.
Yeah, I do wonder about that because I would say that that's kind of the lingering, as much as Bucks fans hate all the Giannis trade stuff that's gone on forever, and then he signs an extension. I mean, this has been going on for a long
Yeah,
time with the Giannis speculation. And then sometimes when you hear the speculation, you wonder, like, have I heard anything specific? Is there anything new that sounds like it's very specific? Or is it everybody just repeating everybody else that thinks like eventually he's going to ask out? And it's been going on for such a long time. And again, in this time, he actually signed an extension. So Bucks fans, much like Cavs fans with the Mitchell stuff, because they were hearing the same shit from all of us over and over again, it's like a nice little victory lap.
we were
Like,
right.
hey, guess what? Um,
We were
but the
right about
OK
Mitchell.
the OKC one is like, should it matter? I know it's kind of back to the beginning conversation about Houston. Should it matter on where they're at in the playoffs,
Oh, I
whether or
think if
not
OKC doesn't win this year, they have to really think we're really close. How did we not win the title? We were favored. All the math said we were going to win the title. If they get bounced in one of these next 3 rounds, I think that's, I think that's the biggest overreaction team, even though Presto doesn't overreact. I think you'd have to really think about it. Like, what's the point of having all these assets and all these picks if you're not going to cash them in at some point? Like this isn't blackjack where you just get to stack chips. Like at some point you have to try to win the title, and they have the best chance this year. But if Giannis is on the table and they can make a run at them, and they're bummed out because they couldn't get it done in the playoffs when it mattered. I don't know. I still think my bet would be on Houston. If I had to bet on a team, I think the Houston thing makes so much sense in so many different ways. And I think it's a good spot for him. I think it's good for everybody. That's the trade that makes sense to me.
is there a trade built around Chet or Jalen Williams and all the draft picks? Like, you'd have to sift through which ones you thought were the more valuable ones if you were Horst, where the
Well,
Bucks
you
just
insist
tell,
on Chet, right? If you're Milwaukee, you're like Chet has to be in it. I'm not even discussing this unless call me back when Chet's in the trade.
wait, if you're Presti or Stone, what's a quicker no? Them asking for Chet or asking Stone and Houston for a man?
Press the yeah, I think Amen's a quicker no. Because Chet's been hurt twice already. It's 2 injuries already, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. The injury thing, I can't throw a counter argument to that. You're right.
He's also one of those guys when you watch him run around, you're like, ah.
I don't know. Did you watch that third quarter against Memphis?
No, I listen, you don't have to sell me on Chet. It's just, he said two injuries, he's 23. So that part does scare me a tiny bit. So I think when you ask me quick or no, I just think Thompson's like, I'm not trading that dude. Shut up, hang up. But if I'm OKC, I'm trying to. Now I'm assuming I've had some sort of terrible playoff loss. Probably trying to start with how about Hartenstein, and
Yeah.
then how about you? You seen Kason Wallace? He's really good, huh?
You hear Russillo talk about Usman Jang?
See our lottery pick? We had the 7th pick in the draft. Like anyone in the lottery? Yeah, you're moving that way. But that's the thing. If Giannis is actually going to be traded, good people are going to be in the trade. You don't just get to not put a good person in the trade. You know, it's a thing.
Yeah, but when you were talking Houston and you're like getting to meet Shingun, Jaylen Green, it's like that. Can I have any of the other guys? So you would do
No,
Jabari,
I
Shingun. Now I don't know what the salaries
I
are off
think
the top of my head.
Şengün, Jabari, Eason, and Jaylen Green, at least 3, but maybe even all 4 are all in the trade, right? If I'm not getting Thompson, then I get everybody else. That's where we're starting. Just keep giving me dudes. We got to wrap it up. Do you have any you want to do a Bill Belichick update quick?
Yeah, I have a small piece of stuff here.
Yeah, let's
I
hear
gotta,
it.
why don't you start though? Because I gotta look up. Um, I gotta make sure I got my facts straight here.
I was trying to think that maybe with coaches, maybe it just doesn't end well, and that's how this usually goes with guys who are super powerful and fly a little too close to the sun and are used to controlling their circumstances, which becomes harder and harder as you get older and you have to stay on top of the ball. That maybe this goes worse more times than we realize. And when we're talking about, I can't believe this is happening to Belichick, maybe we shouldn't be surprised that it's happening to somebody in their mid-70s, that they're making some bad decisions, because we see this in every aspect of life. It's like, what's he doing with this girl? It's like, well, you know,
Yeah, I don't even know
this
that
is
I
how
care
life
about.
goes.
I don't know that I care about the personal part of it all that much because I really do kind of want to like leave people alone, on that part of it, even though we
I
spend
agree.
our entire careers talking
But
about people.
this has leaked into the actual running this UNC program in a variety of ways, which is how it became a bigger story. And also, that interview was so crazy. And for somebody who has been so intensely private, where you just know nothing about him ever, and and then for that to happen the way it happened is just like, it's just really weird. He would have been a top 5 draft pick of, I would never expect anything like this to happen to this person.
Yeah, that's all true too. And I think when you probably look at him evaluating players and being like, what am I bringing into the locker room? Right. He didn't want free thinkers. He wanted people that were single minded. I mean, when you played for the Patriots, you weren't even supposed to live in fucking Boston. Like that was thought of as a bad thing if you were on the Patriots and you
Right.
lived in Boston.
No
Okay.
further than Attleboro.
Yeah. You're going to stay right here. In no offense to that part of the state, but it's
Providence, too far.
so this is if he were evaluating Bill, the person as Bill, he'd be like, what's going on here? I remember Stoops telling me the story about Gronkowski where Belichick called about Gronk before the draft. And
Yeah.
he was like, uh, what's was this guy an asshole? That was it. And he was like, no, man, he's the best. He's the best. And look, he picked him Hall of Fame, Super Bowls later, like it all worked out. But Bill always was very big on prioritizing, like, I don't want any extra shit.
Yeah.
So if he were a booster with those values that he would take from his time running an NFL team, if he were a booster running a college football program and the money guy behind it, and then was evaluating the situation of the head coach being involved in something like this, like Bill would be the first guy to be like, this is all stupid shit. We are giving people all like the reason his brilliance
Intentional
was so right
distractions.
to think how simple his brilliance was, and even in the times I didn't like it, where he just couldn't answer a question because he knew if he answered a question, it just opened up another question. And then he's like looking around at the world going, why do you answer any of this stuff? So I may not have always loved it. And again, it wasn't like I was a reporter who had to deal with any of this stuff, but there'd be times I didn't love it. I didn't love some of the press conferences where there were really serious issues. And it was like, you're going to play this card again? Like you won't even, but I admired the tactic because it was actually really smart. It was like, I remember when the Feeding the Monster book came out, Felger had his radio show at the
Hmm.
ESPN affiliate, right?
Yeah.
And so I come in and it was one of the funniest. So it's Seth Mnookin, I think was his name, the author.
Yeah.
He did Feeding the Monster. It was like this all access thing that John Henry wanted because everybody was jealous of Moneyball. So Felger has Theo Epstein ready to go. It's the big Feeding the Monster interview. I've powered through the book. I've written
Yeah.
out all my questions because I filled them with Felger for a month. And I promise there's a point to this story here. I know you love these long-winded ones. So I show up to that radio station because I didn't really work there. It was just this month that I was there. And you know me, all prepped up, all excited. And I think the world of Theo, so I'm excited to even talk to him. And
Yeah.
Felger looks at me and he goes, we've been mapping out the interview. I don't think we're going to have time for you to say anything. And I was like, great. Like, but it was Felger's show. It wasn't mine.
Sounds like Schrager during the NFL draft. We're gonna throw to you and Schefter again. Just smile for a minute. Sorry,
By the
Schrags.
way, get up. Just absolutely dissing the combat odds for Schrager. Schrager's a big dude. They had like Schefter as the favorite in some Royal Rumble, and Schrager had the lowest odds. And I felt like,
What?
yeah,
Schrager's like 6'2".
he's a big guy. So
Yeah.
anyway, so Felger looks at me and says, we're not gonna have any time for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, fucking awesome. Of course, back then insecure and I'm pissed, but it was the right thing. It was Felger's fucking show, and he wanted to map out the interview. He wanted to control all the timeline of things. So we crack the mics. We bring in Theo. We're back from commercial. And Felger's like, all right, Theo Epstein, GM or whatever. He goes, okay, so, on page 14 is what really jumped out. And Theo's like, I haven't read the book. He fucking he ruined Felger's entire plan because he thought he would at least know when the book was about him. And Theo just stopped him and was like, yeah. And then Felger's looking at me like, you got anything? Do you have anything in there for somebody that's not going to acknowledge that the book even exists? And that's Belichick's playbook. All right. So that part is really interesting because it completely contradicts everything that he's valued. The last thing that I would say about this, and this is the part that always pisses me off, is whenever Bud Selig used to do this constantly, people would be like, hey, baseball, it's kind of losing momentum. And by the way, all of those people were right. What's going on with baseball? What's going on with baseball? And Bud would point to the TV deals. Like, look what we renewed for. Look at the growth on this TV deal versus the last rights deal we did. Conference commissioners all over the country do it every single time they look how great of a job I'm doing. Look at what our new deal was compared to what our last deal was. Belichick in this email actually says, I will say again, quote, that I want this book to be presented as a look at my professional life and how I did my job on the way up to and as the leader of an organization that grew from a $500 million franchise to an $8 billion organization that played in 10 Super Bowls. The Super Bowls, awesome. If you're suggesting that your run in New England increased the value of the team from 500 million to 8 billion, then what the fuck is Brady worth? And by the way, you were awesome. Maybe you've done it better than anybody else. No one would ever deny that. But that way of thinking is if you have as much to do with the value of a franchise in the NFL as the TV rights growth does. Like, that's insane. That's delusional to think that. Like you write that and be like, oh, wow, are any of the other NFL franchises worth a lot more than they were in the 90s? Well, of course, the answer is yes. That's a really,
Even the Bengals are worth more.
yeah, like even that's a very, most people may not understand that. We understand it. People listening to this podcast understand that. But to get to that kind of closing statement of like, this team was worth 500 million before me and now it's worth 8 billion. Dude, you were awesome. You did it again at a level that is unsustainable in the NFL. But the value has way more to do with TV rights than it does you.
There's one other level to that point. It explains a lot about what happened from the mid 2010s on with Brady and Belichick. Because everyone was like, Patriot away. We're just about Super Bowls. But there was clearly some sort of ego thing. And it's two guys that really understood their place in history in a whole bunch of different ways, right? And it was always like, we're in this together. There's no credit. But the credit thing was a big part of it. And Garoppolo's in there and he's really thinking about, I never wanted to believe it. I never, when Rickersham and people like that were reporting about it, and I was like, fuck that. I want to hear this. Stop trying to cause trouble. But there clearly was a ton of trouble. And I think when you win titles like that, we saw it with the Last Dance documentary, and you saw the Krause, Jordan, you saw Jordan and Pippen who no longer talk. They hated Krause. The only one that really,
Hey, the Krause stuff at the end is crazy.
Yeah,
like,
they seem to get like Phil Jackson, but then you look at the Kobe Shaq stuff with Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson's writing books. The credit grabbing that happens when you've had real success is surprising because the rings should be the best example of how much success you've had, but for whatever reason. So anyway, I think that really explained to me why Brady didn't end up with the Patriots, because what everybody was writing about and doing the sports radio topic of who's more responsible for all the Super Bowls, Belichick or Brady, and the right answer was always both. They needed each other, and that's the answer. But clearly, they both kind of thought each of them was more responsible than the other. So when I read that paragraph, I thought, man, Belichick must have been so pissed when Brady had that Tampa season where he won the title. Because clearly he does give a shit about all this stuff. And all the media he did last year, the fact that he's writing this book, some of the documentaries, and we always thought, nah, he doesn't care, he doesn't care. He clearly really cares. And so I read that same email and I'm like, oh, he really did. He really does have a massive ego about all this stuff that he would say that.
It made me wonder too if he was like thinking he's owed more when you start throwing around
Is he
dollar
wrong?
figures.
I mean, when
Yeah,
Kraft bought the Patriots, they were ready to move to St. Louis and they didn't. He kind of saved the team. They were the black sheep of the local sports scene. And then Brady and Belichick, I think both of them probably built it up. But like, we saw this happen when LeBron was in Cleveland, right? Cleveland was like a top 4 franchise and all the Forbes lists. And then he left and went to Miami and they were like 28th. And then he came back in 2014. It's like top 5 franchises and Cleveland's in there. So, you get the right asset and it does make the franchise. But the
I'm
funny
not.
thing
Look,
is,
I'm not
oh,
diminishing his value, but I'm
no,
talking
I know what your
the
point is
value of
though.
all these franchises has way more to do with television rights
But
than even
you
the
don't think,
accomplishments.
but you don't think he put that in there partly because of what Kraft did with that Dynasty Apple thing?
Yeah, that's 100%.
When Kraft's just rewriting history as the three of us. That last 10 years, I was just holding on. I was holding us together with all the dumb shit he said in that. And now it's just these guys are like they're in credit grab bukkake, just going at it, just battling each other.
Took us 2 hours to get a porn reference out of
Yeah,
you. I thought
sorry.
you were.
It's
It's
over the
getting late.
2 hour mark.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get aggregated again. Be great. Gotta get those aggregators something. Anyway, Belichick's a classic example of if you had just left 4 years ago and just moved to Wyoming, done the Johnny Carson,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe
I
talk
don't.
about you so highly.
When you've
And
been
instead
competing
we're
your entire life, I don't blame guys for wanting to hang on to the whole thing. The Brady Tampa
not
Bay
talking
Super
about
Bowl
that
is
part.
my second. That's my second favorite Brady Super Bowl.
I'm talking about the UNC 24-year-old PR person controlling his life, people wondering if it's elder abuse, like really like dark shit. People like this has gotten to the point that like my wife's friends are asking me about, hey, what's going on with Bill Belichick and this girl? I read like on Apple News, they had a story about how like that's what this has reached. That CBS Sunday morning thing was like his version of Tom Cruise on the Oprah couch. Like it's part of his legacy now.
I just don't understand somebody that understands how the media works as well as they do, which clearly he does, what he thought that was going to be. Like, hey, this is the deal. You come in, you promote the book, and we ask you questions about it.
No, but this is what people are worried about. Maybe he's not batting 1,000 right now.
I'm not ready to go there. We'll see what kind
Well,
of defense they're running.
that Sunday morning thing was insane. That was insane. I never in a million kajillion years would have guessed that he would be in that position. Out of
Joe
all
Prunty,
people,
maybe.
out of all people, that was
That would be a
that's
good pod. Five guys, most likely, that you would expect that to happen to.
be good. Before we go, picks for round two. Celtics, you still going Cleveland?
Yeah, I think Brunson having to go through the gauntlet of options as opposed to being able to switch into Beasley, Hardaway, and Dennis Schroeder,
Yeah,
even though Schroeder, I think, competed like crazy against him. I think it's a
yeah.
little different challenge. And I think Cat is going to have to cover a lot more ground than he did against Durant. I'm still holding out hope Garland's going to come back game two, but today was super impressive. I'm totally with you. And you've been higher on the Pacers than I've been, and you might be right about it. OKC, no issues, and I have Minnesota.
Is there any case for Denver?
I mean, I could sit here and say, oh, the craziest thing about even the elimination game is Jokic and Murray weren't even going crazy. I think by Jokic's our standards for Jokic, this wasn't some like Jokic fest for 7 games.
Yeah.
That
Well, I
that they
think
were the first team with 6 players with 15 or more points in a game 7 in NBA history.
it's
Like
so funny
everyone
those
stepped
game
up.
sevens though, like Christian Brown became right. That was the Grant Williams game for Christian Brown where he was just huge. Like the game sevens, there's always the random. It's the Buddy
But he
Hield.
healed. Yeah,
Yeah, you always see those. That
on
would
our
have been a fun
test.
one to predict for a FanDuel bet. Russillo, you got 2 pods this week, and then I will see you live on Sunday night, which will not be as fun as this one. Our guy Steph Curry came through. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks for hanging.
That's it for the YouTube stream. We will see you next week.